to Spain and to Puerto Sherry, where 8 top international teams race on very fast TP52 monohulls. It's the second event on the 5 Regatta 2019 52 Super Series. We have an amazing venue, the Bay of Cadiz, where race conditions will test teamwork, tactics, sailing skills and speed. 8 races sailed, just 2 races left, just 4 points separating the top 3 teams. Who will take the win in Puerto Sherry? It's the 2019 52 Super Series Royal Cup. It's the Super Saturday Showdown, the final day of racing. Indeed, it is the Super Saturday Showdown here in Puerto Sherry, and a very good afternoon. Welcome to beautiful Andalusia. We're at a new venue and we've had a full complement of races so far. 8 races, 7 different boats winning, and a great day in prospect. Top of the table we have Brunello, the newest boat. They've never won a regatta before. They have the young Olympic champion on the helm, the youngest helm in the fleet. Up against them they have Azzurra, just 1 point behind, and they have the old sage. They have the Santiago Lange as a tactician, 3 times Olympic medalist and a current gold medalist in the NACRA fleet. And behind them, only 4 points behind, are Prevezza, John Cutler moving onto the helm of that boat, and they really have been one of the form teams this year. Let's see how they got there. Let's look back at yesterday at the Royal Cup. So race 7 breezes round about 13 knots off the start line. Now, interesting to note that the wind axis has gone round to 280, so much more right than we've seen so far this regatta. Very even start with Allegra starting off the middle of the line, Prevezza on the pin end, Azzurra towards the committee boat, and at the top end of the beat, Allegra have done best, leading round, Azzurra second, Prevezza third, and that's the order pretty much through the race. 1 or 2 ups and downs, and at the finish line it's Allegra winning the first race of the regatta. Azzurra gets second to extend their lead overall at the Royal Cup. So race number 8 starts in about 13-14 knots of breeze, great conditions. And off the start line, will Allegra go really nicely, have a nice clear lane as they did in the previous race. They're going particularly quick. Phoenix tack over to the right early on and make a nice profit. At the top mark it's Phoenix, Allegra Platoon and Brunello down in 5th place. At the leeward gate then it's still Phoenix leading, Platoon second. This time we see Brunello jibe and get inside Allegra at the leeward gate and make a place gain. And then at the top mark, once again the lead is still with Phoenix, Platoon still second, Brunello tack inside Quantum Racing and take another place, and through down the finish line it's Phoenix leading, Platoon second, Brunello stealing 3rd place and taking the overall lead going into the final day. So indeed, that is the situation going into today. Brunello leading by a single point. Lars, what do we think about the Bay of Cadiz, about Andalusia, about Puerto Sherry? A new venue, how important is it for the 52 Super Series to come to different places?
I think it's an important part of our DNA. We love to go to new places, and at the end, the venues are totally different. So the feedback, what we got so far from the sailor, they love it here. Some of them, they know the venue already since, I don't know, 20 years, something like that. There were lots of events taking place here. But for them, it's really nice, you know, the venue in general, because we have the containers close to the boat. The setup is perfect. The food in this part of the world is beautiful as well. So I think at the end, Puerto Sherry offered the full package.
It's offered the full package, and as we've said, we've sailed a full 8 races, racing every day. That's important, isn't it?
Yeah, the conditions are great. Yesterday and the day before, we had champagne sailing, good wind, and a very strong breeze. It was not as patchy as the first day, because the first day was a little bit like a tombola, you know, like a lottery. There was something in for everybody, but also keep in mind 8 races and 7 different winners. So that proves the competition is on the highest level, and the sailing is fantastic. And also talking about the Super Saturday, I think there's...
What a showdown.
What a showdown, exactly. So
we have the newest boat in the fleet, never won a regatta before, Olympic champion on board, and a very strong team. How important is it to see new talent coming through into the Super Series?
I think that's one of the most important things also on the long run. We have to motivate younger people to join us, so we are happy that Brunello is back. I talked to Albi, the team manager, skipper, team manager, strategist, and he's doing everything. But at the end, he's doing a great job. I think what he said, there are good vibrations within the team, and at the end, sailing is very much a teamwork. So if the team works well, I think it's easier to win a regatta, and it's not only about the big superstars.
That's right, and big smiles all round.
Yeah, I think at the end, it's very much about the positive vibrations, and we are thinking we're having a good time here in Puerto Sherry.
One of the things, sustainability is part of our DNA in the Super Series. We here in particular.
I think for us, we are doing the normal groundwork, the beach cleanup, talking to the kids, and, that's really important for us. But at the end, it's very much about the involvement of other stakeholders as well. And that's one of the good things, what happened here in Puerto Sherry. So I talked to the CEO of the marina this morning, and he's handling all the whole infrastructure. And their idea is to become plastic-free as soon as possible. I think that's really good, and this underlines as well, that proves the concept that it makes sense to influence people, talk to the people, because as soon as the discussion starts, the people will say, okay, you are totally right, and now it's the right time to do something, because we can't wait for the politicians, we can't wait for the government, we have to do something on our own, and that's what we are doing.
It was interesting there, wasn't it? We went and cleaned up in these rocks. Now, that's not an area that many people go to. It's different with the beach, because everybody goes to the beach, leaves the rubbish or takes the rubbish home. But this was an area of rocks where there's so much rubbish just washed up, and yet we went and cleaned it up. And we had some fishermen there, and the fishermen were 50-50. Some of them are saying, oh yes, sorry, we shouldn't really, we should be more conscientious about taking stuff home. And others are just like, oh, it's rocks,
Yeah. But that's why I'm saying before, as soon as the people start thinking about it, as soon as you enter into a discussion, most of the people are open-minded. And that's why we're saying it's very much about the call to action, just to explain them why, the thing is 2050, more plastic in the sea than fish, that's for fishermen. It's like, okay, yeah, you're totally right. And then they start thinking about it, and they said, okay, where are the gloves? Can I help you? And I think that proves influencing is one of the main topics.
Meantime, we had our ambassadors meeting, and we've got some nice initiatives going forward, the initiatives coming from within the fleet.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things, to talk to the ambassador. The concept is working well. And at the end, they are very much proactive. At the beginning, when we started with that, it was a little bit like that we were doing presentations. But nowadays, they come to the meeting, they are prepared, they are interested, they are interactive. And so that's what we said before, that the full package. And it's very much about involvement.
It is very much about involvement. It's about using sport to influence people. Going back to the sport, then, we spoke to two of the main protagonists, as I said, these two current Olympic gold medalists, Santi Lange and young Chime Fontella. We spoke to them before they went on the water.
That's why we are here. I love the pressure. I love to race against Santi and his good team. Just 1 point separates us, but the whole fleet is right on our back. And in 2 races, many things can happen. So let's have fun today.
It's great that Sim is here. I love it. And honestly, today is not about them and us. It's, as Sim said, it's about the fleet. I think in like a medal race, you have to continue look anyone, because anyone can have a really good day, and even 5 points is nothing in this fleet. So I keep saying it again and again, it's about us, and that's it. For sure, they are strong. They are our training partners. We know how fast they are. They are sailing right now, so they are already pushing pressure on us.
Thank you. Great. Good one, man.
So great friends and rivals, Santiago Lange and Chime Fontella. So hopefully we can join Jenny Tulloch on the water. Jenny is our eyes and ears and our expert analysis. Jenny, looking pretty good, is it?
It is looking great. We are an hour earlier than the previous days of racing, so slightly less breeze out here, but we have very much similar conditions. We've got this westerly Pontiente breeze, which we've had all 3 days. It's the sea breeze for this direction. It's an onshore breeze. But today it's a little bit further left. So the first 2 days of racing that we were live, we were seeing it from about 240, which is directly due west. Yesterday we saw 280, which is much further north of west. And today we're about 210. So a tiny bit to the left of normal. And it means the race course is just straight offshore. We had some side influence from the land yesterday when the course was a bit more angled to the right, and instead today we're just racing out into the open ocean, basically into the Atlantic. So we've seen it be quite tricky out here all week long. The sailors have been saying you can't really call the shifts, you can't really see them on the water, and I think even more so today. You just look upwind and it's just, you can see the light water here of the fact that the tide is coming in, and then you can just see darker water out in the horizon, and I can't necessarily say what side's gonna pay. I think it's gonna be really interesting.
Oh, come on. Anyway, listen, we've been bigging up this three-way battle at the top of the table, but and we've been bigging up the fact there have been 7 different winners. But equally, most of the teams have had scores low down in the 7s and 8s. So in that respect, a 7-point margin back to Platoon, it really is still anybody's regatta, isn't it, Jenny?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, between the top two, yeah, you were talking about Santi and Shime having a lot of love for each other, but I saw Santi sitting with Albie this morning as well, the skipper of Brunello, and they were sitting and having a coffee for about 20 minutes. So there's really no love lost between the two teams on the top of the leaderboard, and yet it is very close behind. It's just 28, 29, 32, 35, 37. So it could be anyone's game. We've seen some really deep scores out here. I mean, yesterday we saw a team get kind of a first and a last, and the day before the same. So I think the reality is the scores are close now. They could be even tighter before the second race, and it could be a big mix-up.
Exactly. I mean, and let's not forget that Azura go into this race having finished last yesterday in the second race. You always want to go into your medal race with some confidence, and that may have shaken them a little bit.
Yeah, I think the fun part about it, Santiago Lange, the tactician, sure, it could have shaken them, but he's always saying he never looks at the scores. So for him, he probably had no idea really that they were leading by say 7 points or 8 points, and then that eighth dropped them to now be in second. It's kind of something that the rest of the team will know, but he actually doesn't look at the scoreboard and he doesn't try to think about it that way. And yet I think the reality is today you have to keep Brunello in mind, and you have to kind of, if you're in second, Brunello the one who could cover them, but for Azura, it's just maybe thinking about splitting from them at times, trying to get 1 point in between them, things like that, that they do come into play knowing the scores, and I think we will see that they kind of have to play it that way a little bit. But both of those guys, the two that we're talking about here, Santi and Shime, they have won gold medals, and recently in the 2016 Olympics. So talk about being able to perform when the pressure is on in the medal race. And Shime himself said yesterday, today will be like a medal race. You just have to have confidence in what you see on the water, and you have to go for it. He kind of said you have to be a little bit brazen, and I think seeing that showdown is going to be so exciting.
Meantime, Provezza, we were trying to do an interview with all 3 of the top protagonists, but Provezza were already on the water practicing. What does that tell you?
I think they've got a lot to prove too. I mean, that team has... Well, fair. Yeah, Andy, it says get up a little earlier, have less coffee. No, find them in the coffee shop. But no, I think that does go to show, when we were looking at the boats, there were people on board Azura, and there was nobody on board Brunello. And when we went searching for them, they were just in the coffee shop, hanging out, having coffee. And I think there are always different approaches to a day like today, and there's the ability to kind of stay calm and relaxed until, say, 10 minutes before the gun, and for some people that's the best way to get rid of the butterflies and to stay focused, and for others it's get out there early, practice early, and I think you see that with the likes of Platoon and sometimes Quantum Racing as well. If they're really fired up, they'll go out early and they try to get everyone in the groove, and the crew kind of working together in that way, and it just depends on the dynamics of the team which one works the best. And I think we don't know yet. We'll see today, but it sounds like Provezza's pretty fired up. I think they're pretty fired up, but I think they have a slightly stricter regime possibly on board, or certainly a change regime, shall we say, for sure. But also I think one thing that John Cutler brings, besides the talent in the helm and a broader knowledge of tactics and strategy, is he has been an Olympic coach. He's been in the Olympic environment for a long time. He was also the coach for the team, and so when it comes to things like the team management and things like today, just keeping a lid on the pressure, making sure everybody performs to the top level, then he's extremely skilled at that. And I think that's important as well, to have the leadership role on board, and to have it, I mean, those are two very different setups. To have it in the driver, in the skipper, in the helm, the way that they have on Preveza versus on Brunello, it's clearly a very different dynamic, as we were saying earlier. Chimay bringing his very young talent to the boat, but Albie being the skipper on board. I think every boat has to deal with how they execute it differently, and I think it's cool to see Preveza having swapped up their crew so much this year, and having John Cutler step in from the coach boat to be driving, and to see that it's actually working and performing for them. I think that's great.
And also at the back of Azura, you have Colli Parada now taking a much more proactive role as strategist, working with Santi, and he was saying that Santi used to coach him when he was 13. They went to the Olympics together, Colli very much as not as a coach, but as just as backup, and did a lot of the preliminary regattas with him. And they're a very, very strong unit in their own right.
And I think that's important to be able to then debrief and to communicate, because if you're new to a team and you don't quite know how to not step on toes, but you need to be able to both talk about what your own problems were. I mean, Santi was hard on himself a lot last year when they made mistakes, but also with other problems with like with the crew maneuvering or amongst the team. But to be able to have a relationship like that goes back years and years, and just have open and honest communication. I mean, that's what all of these teams are striving for. That's what the majority of them have in a bunch of ways, because a lot of them have sailed. I mean, take a team like Platoon, the heart of that team has sailed together for years and years and years. And so you can see that actually does really help to make a team go better. And yet at some point in time, the kind of new blood like Brunello, sometimes that is really helpful as well. The fact that you can still have open, honest conversation, but nobody's stuck in their routines either, because they haven't been sailing together for too long. So both seem to work in a way, Andy.
Indeed, and you know, kind of corresponding with that in some ways is obviously the situation Quantum are in, where they're just learning these, or relearning the roles, or learning the roles, depending on which personalities you're talking about coming into the team. They're still finding their feet. It's only about the very, very small percentages, the really stuff that should be intuitive. It's not quite there yet, and this has been a venue which has exposed that.
Well, speaking of a venue exposing things, I think we're about to have a very tough start for a couple of boats here. It looks like Azura and Quantum Racing coming in from the left-hand side. We've got 50 seconds to go to the start. Quantum forcing Azura very early. I mean, that tack from Quantum onto Azura makes Azura quite tight for the pin with 40 seconds to go. You can see Platoon and a boat below Platoon actually tacking up for the line, but there is going to be a really, really tough battle here for the pin and the line, and it's going to put Italians in a really tough spot. We know that maybe Guillermo Parada should be able to pull it off, but eyes on the pin end for the moment, while up at the boat end you can see the blue bow number 8 of Brunello. So these are the two teams at the top of the leaderboard at the moment. The blue bow of Brunello coming out much further higher, now going bow down. 12 seconds to go, 11 seconds to go. Azura looking very, very slow at the moment. Azura slow and deep, might not even be able to make the pin. They will probably make it, but they're going to be slow. They could be rolled by Quantum Racing. And that's the gun. It is bow number 19, Allegre, off the middle, actually looking great. Azura getting through cleanly, surprisingly. I was calling them a little bit less accurately than I should have been, because that was a stellar start for Azura. And in fact, it's Quantum Racing then who's out the back, who's going to have to reach off behind Azura here. Meanwhile, up the line, Andy, Brunello, it doesn't look like they've gotten off as well as they would have liked.
No, they're just about half a metre back in Preveza. Preveza started at the boat end of the line and have the key position to the right of the group. Upwind of Brunello have to find a little bit of pace now. As you said, Jenny, Allegre starting in the middle of the line, as they have done frequently. Don't have quite the lane they had yesterday when Brunello had to tack off, and that left them clear. But really, that was an excellent start from Azura. We're seeing them with the early lead. So too at the same time, Preveza moving forward on Brunello. Brunello just dropping very, very slightly. And the first boat to tack out is Allegre.
I think if you're Azura, you've got to be happy here. I mean, you were talking about wanting to finish yesterday on a good race, and having 8th yesterday maybe wasn't the best way to go forward, but instead they've come out here They clearly wanted the pin. They were deep below the start line on port tack, ready to fight for the pin, and fight they did, and they nailed it over Quantum Racing. They executed like rock stars, and I think now you're seeing what looks like, to eye, a 2 or 3 boat length lead to Azura, and Brunendisek, as you said, just falling back behind Preveza, not really capable of holding their line as well as maybe they should be. And I think we know, Andy, or we were told that perhaps they're switching drivers on the upwind, that Shime's doing the start itself, and then at some point handing over to Vladimir, the owner. And so I think that in and of itself, just the switching moment would be a difficult task, much less when you're in a really tight fleet like this and in a tough spot.
Would you be giving up the helm?
Would I ever? No, but if you're not the one owning the boat, you're just getting to drive for him, then I think you kind of have to.
Absolutely, but at the moment it's between Azura and Preveza on opposite sides of the course, opposite ends of the start line. Azura started off the pin with a peach of a start. Preveza pretty good off the committee boat end of the line. There are top 2 boats on virtual at the moment. Azura had a period when they seemed to be sailing quite high, a nice high mode. We're actually moving up towards the line of Phoenix. Meantime, Platoon really, as you said, Jenny, not really started at their best this regatta.
Yeah, you know, we spoke about it yesterday, that they're not, that aside from the 2 races where they started at the pin, and at the pin you give yourself the ability to bow down and kind of get out of anything, except for maybe Quantum here. They can't really bow down much more than that because they're already in the bad air of Azura. But when they're starting in the middle, Platoon just doesn't seem to have their timing down. And it's interesting because, as we said, they're one of the teams that sails together all the time. So they should be able, between Harm and between Dirk de Ritter, who's their main trimmer, and between Russ Hullcrow, their jib trimmer, and then John Kostecki, tactician. Those 3 guys, aside from Harm, have sailed together for years and years and years on all kinds of different boats. And to then put them with Harm, where they've sailed plenty in the 52 Super Series, you would think that they'd have that execution down. And it just seems like they're not quite capable. And I think this is a regatta where you can move through the fleet, but not methodically the way that John Kostecki likes to do. It's a bit more haphazard. You can go to the left and the left pays and you've moved through.
The same as exactly as what Ed Reynolds was saying the other day about Quantum. You know, they're conservative by nature, but conservative by philosophy in terms of their race strategy, and they just haven't been able to, as you say, pick their way through the fleet, take the little shifts, get a clear lane. It just hasn't worked for them, and you know, certainly off that start line they were second line, coming off second best to Azura.
And they've just tacked out now, actually, and yeah, it doesn't look like a good spot either. I mean, the surprising tack off for me was Allegre, because they did look like they had good positioning off the line, and they went so early on that it was almost like they had decided the right was their side and they wanted the right. And I'm not sure how confident I would be in that. Yesterday, the right paid a little bit, and Allegre came out of the right twice, and so maybe that's what they're happy with. But today, we're in such a different dynamic. As I said, it's about 70 degrees to the left of where yesterday's breeze was. We can't even get close to that shoreline. Wind breeze is this far left. No, it should be from the west. Sometimes you then can assume that it should go right throughout the day, and so you could hedge your bets right like Allegre has done. But I think Azura seems very confident in the left side at the moment. As you can tell, they haven't tacked, and they probably could cross the fleet. Maybe not with Preveza there. Maybe Azura is a little bit pinned, and so they're being forced to this side. But we also know that they had points yesterday where they split from the fleet. I think I said that they had cojones to split from the fleet so hard to the left, and they made big gains doing so. So even on kind of a right-sided race course, they were happy and confident in the left, and it paid. So I think today we're seeing that. They aggressively went left.
We are just seeing on the left, certainly with Azura, they are just seeing the bow down a little bit, possibly going into a little bit of a knock. Also with Quantum, that left side just seeing a little bit of a header, I think. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, because it looks like Preveza held their bow higher for a lot longer, although Preveza now just coming maybe bow down as well. So somewhere in here, if Azura thinks they've gotten into the lefty as much as they can, then they should take that hitch, head back onto port if they think
They've got Preveza.
that they're going to be able to cross Preveza.
I don't think they would at the moment.
Now then it's a tough one, isn't it?
But as you said, Jenny, definitely not the same kind of pressure as we've seen on race 1 on previous days.
No, and you can even tell the swell hasn't really built up yet. So there's still kind of the little bit of Atlantic chop that we have out here, but we don't have the big rolling waves that we were getting yesterday afternoon once the breeze is really properly up. And so it's a different dynamic on board for the boats. The setups will be slightly lighter. The hiking maybe not quite as hard. The downwinds, the weight will be further forward, but it's not that they haven't had light air as well. They had a lighter air practice day on Tuesday.
We've just seen Quantum Tack give us a little bit of an idea how the tack across looks. For the moment, Azura just hanging. We're on a set going quite nicely now, sailing slightly higher, I think, than Azura. We were Quantum really not looking that pretty just now at all.
Here goes Azura setting up for the tack. I think Preveza is going to be very, very strong here. I think Azura might even be struggling to cross Brunelesec, but at some point here, they had to go. They're getting so close to this port ley line that if you go on the port ley line and you let everyone tack on you and have nowhere else to go, then you're screwed for a long period of time. Whereas here, if they tack early like this, maybe didn't think they quite had the ability to leave out. So Brunelesec going back early underneath Azura, which does mean Azura's got decent spot, at least second probably. Preveza very clearly crossing in front.
Advantage with Preveza just now. They're going to tack on top of their main rivals for the Royal Cup. Preveza actually also the circuit leaders now.
Yeah, you could tell us really quickly, Andy, about the last regatta and Preveza's almost win.
Absolutely, there was 4 seconds in it between them and Brunelesec on the last race, and that was all that separated between them and the win, which of course went to the platoon. I think that's probably been a reminder of just attention to small details, raising their game as much as they can for this regatta. Coming back stronger here and proving that they really do have the capability to win regattas. But so Preveza have won 1 regatta in the last few years. That was in Puerto Portals, a very memorable day, huge celebrations all round. And that was a bit of a season for them because they had the 2 regattas, but from memory, the 2 regattas in the States, they were close to winning going into the final day and just didn't quite close out the win. And it was only in Portals that year that they won on the last day. But they really do have a nice lane there coming across.
You spoke about Brunelesec earlier having never won a regatta, even with their previous team. They took last year out from the racing, and they've got a lot of new people on board. But Azura also has had about a year off from winning regattas as well. So they won the 2017 season, and they won the last regatta there in Menorca. But then they switched tacticians. They brought Santiago Longue on board when Vasco Vescoto left to go to Luna Rosa in the America's Cup, and it's been tricky for them to get together as a team a little bit, and for him to get back into 52 racing. But to see them really fighting for this leaderboard again like this, and maybe this is their time. I think they were the bridesmaid twice last year with 2 second places. So between these 3 teams, they all have a lot to prove today.
but it is Preveza who appear to
To
be...
me, it looks like
Yeah, Preveza still just about 30 metres in it, I think. But it's very, very close on virtual between the top three teams. Brunasek appear to have dropped relative to Platoon. Allegri out on that right side appear to have made some kind of gains, but really the advantage changing all the time. Breeze picking up very slightly, I think. Another half a knot, perhaps.
yeah, and I think we should
Just seeing Jenny,
we should
seeing
just see it
Platoon,
continue to
yeah,
build all afternoon.
Platoon just tacking inside Azura. I think Azura will have the legs.
Well, that's what I was going to say a second ago. Is I think, to me, it looks like Azura's made some losses out here. I mean, they had to go back to the left. They were attacked on by Preveza. They almost had the positioning to hold their lane, but not quite. They tried to stay for a boat length or so, and then they came out to the left-hand side. And, you know, it's 50-50. There could have been a slightly bit more pressure out here. There could have been a good shift. But as they went back across Quantum Racing, who had been deep, it looked like Quantum had made a little bit of gains. Then as we see Platoon come in here and tack just inside of Azura, I wouldn't really give Azura necessarily second overall anymore. I think they did make a tiny bit of a loss. However, you have the actual virtual eye to tell us if I'm right or wrong.
No, that's right, but also the other thing that's in play just now is the other boats. And you've got Allegra and Platoon very much in contention in this race. And momentarily we saw Allegra in between Preveza and Azura. That really is what Azura and Preveza are both looking for just now. If they can get a boat between them, it really does set up a great finale. But in the meantime, the advantage is with Preveza, who are about 70 or 80 metres clear, as Azura deal with the increasing influence of Platoon. Platoon bow forward on them. I think they will start to affect them. On board just now.
They have, in fact, they're tacking at the moment on Azura.
So Azura forced to tack twice in this upwind by other boats. And that starts to be expensive relative to Preveza.
Now they've just come back and they're lee bowing Quantum Racing. So that double tack there, they didn't even have the option or the opportunity to build speed before they went for the lee bow of Quantum Racing. So that's a huge loss to Azura overall, this left-hand side. And I think Preveza really set it up for them. They were protecting their win in this race when they lee bowed them earlier. They were protecting their ability to maybe overtake overall. And there was kind of nothing Azura could do. It was all from the start line. The only other option for Azura would have been to come all the way out to the left-hand corner and just tack once. And yet, as we said, if they'd done that, Preveza might have come all the way with them and then just tacked once on them as well, and they still would have then sat in their bad air for forever. So I think the reality is this is going to be really unfortunate for the Italians, and they'll be bummed that that happened, and Santiago Longue, Argentinian on board, will be annoyed that they got ping-ponged twice. But there was almost nothing more they could do there, Andy. Preveza's just sailed so well.
Indeed. They really had it between their teeth off the start line. They wanted that right side, started the committee boat. Looking very quickly at the projected points table, then Brunasek would go into the final race with a lead. So Brunasek a little bit on the back foot just now. Preveza, John Cutler then on the helm. Hamish Pepper, who said this is the best racing there is in the world at the moment.
I think, Andy, he's probably really happy to be back in the 52s.
Absolutely,
he was here 2 years ago with
100%,
sled, and then, yeah.
But he's a sailor with fantastic pedigree in this class, going way, way back. And happy, you know, in that situation, you want to come back and improve yourself, don't you?
Yeah, very much so, and they are. They've had a great season so far, and I think when you have a team that doesn't do as well as they would like, you understand when things are mixed up. And so with sled, it completely understood to have Ray Davies and have kind of the heart of Emirates Team New Zealand's tactical team come through and do a replacement there. And, that makes sense. And as Hamish would know himself, it does make sense. Platoon, however, speaking of tactical teams and the heart of them, Platoon just sliding into the lead there and giving Preveza a run for their money. So maybe not as bad for Azura as I was expecting, because I had thought Platoon was deeper in the fleet than they are. Platoon instead now fighting for the lead themselves. And you spoke about it, Andy, this morning. They're also in contention. I mean, 35 points to Preveza's 32.
Yeah, Platoon coming back into this very quickly. Just going back up and will tack on the lee bow of Preveza, getting into a little bit of a match race. But Platoon taking the lead as we get to the top mark. So Platoon leading round, Preveza second. It's going to be Azura third probably. Sorry, that's just the protection mark, the spacer mark. Protects the windward mark from late port tackers. Azura indeed.
It is, yeah, Platoon round, and we spoke about them earlier not having a great start, so really good ability to just nail some shifts on that upwind to get ahead of Preveza right at the top mark, and Platoon into the lead, Preveza into second, and then about a boat length and a half to Azura here in third. So the left side becoming a bit stronger than we thought it might have been. Platoon just able to get some shifts. Azura just able to hold on to third. And meanwhile behind them, Sled tacking in shy of the rest of the pack. They're going to get rolled by Quantum. Sled is going to be very slow, and it might allow Brennanasek to sneak over the top of them. Brennanasek at points was doing okay there, but just got a little bit sticky in the pack on the right-hand side in the upwind, and I think you could see them here just sliding around Sled with a leg ray behind them. Sled actually able to make it through to the top mark better than the batter of Quantum, I thought. So Sled doing well to be fifth. Brennanasek hurting with a sixth place, a leg ray into seventh, and Phoenix in eighth. And I think Brennanasek knows they've got some work to do to try to hold on the lead overall. And Andy, we saw them make massive moves through the fleet yesterday when they were deep.
We did. Let's see what they can do now. But all credit to Platoon on that beat. I think really they stayed out of trouble when we saw, in particular, Azura engaging initially with Quantum, and then at the top end, Preveza just being hurt a little bit by Platoon. And Azura, as you said, I think doing 3 extra tacks. All straight sets at the offset mark. Eight boats lining up.
Exactly.
So Platoon, as we said, 7 points behind the regatta leaders, the Royal Cup leaders, Brennanasek. Platoon, the winners in Menorca, first regatta of the season. Really doing all they can to spoil the party of the Preveza, Azura, Brennanasek trio.
Well, this will definitely make the points tighter for the next race. If Platoon's able to stay ahead, and if Preveza or Azura drop at all in this race, then out the back, Brennanasek going for a jibe. So we did see them do this as well yesterday. They were one of the first teams to jibe early, if not the first team to jibe early in 2 of the downwinds yesterday, and it did pay off for them. I think they made a 7th to 3rd jump once, so we could potentially see them make what's probably a 6th to 4th place jump, I think. Just in front of them, Sled and Quantum Racing seemed very much within their grasp, and then there's as you can see, that little bit of a gap up to the top 3. But the top 3, this will be close. This will be interesting. When it gets light like this, the ability to attack from behind as the boat that can jibe on the leader or the boat in front of you is much more powerful. The jibing angles are so much wider. You have to sail so much harder that if the boat behind you jumps you in the jibe, then you really have to try to get your breeze clear in front of them again. And yeah, exactly. So we'll see maybe a good fight here between Provezza and Azura trying to get onto Platoon's breeze as they come to this bottom corner.
Let's keep our eyes on Brunesek meantime. Let's have a quick look at the projected points tally at the end of this race. If positions stayed the same, that'd be fascinating. It's really so incredibly close. Azura are leading the regatta just now on 32, Provezza 34, Brunesek 34, and Platoon on 36. So really is getting closer all the time. Certainly in terms of Platoon coming into the mix. There really is a time for cool heads, Jenny, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just wondering who's the coolest head on this race course, though. I mean, we're missing some hot heads, that's for sure, this year. But yeah, I think he's outwardly very capable of keeping it cool. You're right, and I think the reality is his pedigree. He is still the only trifecta in the world, the only Olympic medalist, Volvo Ocean Race winner, and America's Cup winner. So there's something to be said in the knowledge bank that is John Kostecki. And maybe there's times when if you've got that much in your past, you're actually cool-headed because, you know, it's just another race here. But I think the reality is he's always so fired up to go racing, and he's always wanting to win. And as we've said, they're calm and collected in their tactical decision making always. And when we think of a regatta like this, where we've talked about how they had bad starts, they've won run race, but they haven't been remarkable, and yet they're still very much in the mix for us to say how close they are, the points that you just said, the projected points. And the reality is they've been kind of third, 3-6, 5-1, 3, 8-7-2. They've been right up there. They've had 2 bad races. Here goes the domino effect, the front 3 all driving, all right in a row. I actually think Platoon will be just fine where they are. They were able to soak low enough.
And the thing about Platoon is
to keep breeze clear in front.
Their focus now, you know, having won a regatta, is very much on this. I mean, it is always, but their focus is on the season, and they're thinking about that probably much more than the Provezzas and the Azuras thinking about, and particularly Brunesek thinking about winning a regatta. Platoon have done that. This is about just maximising their points, winning as many races as they can, and see where they finish up at the end of today. But it's incredibly close, isn't it? There's next to nothing between the Platoon, Provezza, Azura. They're all at equidistance, about 30 metres apart each.
Exactly, they're eking themselves ever closer to being able to win this with the 5. So close last year to actually being able to, I guess they weren't that close to winning overall, but they were second overall for the season, and they had made some major mistakes at points, and they didn't quite equal what Quantum Racing was doing over the season, so they know what they need to do, and they're trying to execute it early and doing well at it.
That's right. I mean, the thing about Platoon is you can remember a steady consistency over the course of the season, but like I said yesterday, there were certain days that were total horror shows where they had 2 penalties or were over the line, and that's really what bit them at the end of the season, as much as the positive effect of their consistency.
And you do wonder if that's, I mean, we harped on about their starts in the middle of the line, but you wonder if that's now ingrained in their head a little bit, that you'd rather just have a bad start than be over. And they were over multiple times last year, you're right.
Definitely,
so if the...
I spoke with Jordi Calafat between regattas, and he was, I was saying, so what are the things you're working on? And he said, yeah, we're working on the starts. That's exactly what you're saying, trying to be a little bit more conservative, not and managing the risk for harm to ensure that you get a good start rather than a brilliant start, something that you can work from, a foundation, a platform,
I mean, I think we saw it here, a perfect example in this race. We harped on them a little bit because they didn't have a great start. They looked like they were deep in the pack, and they just lucked out in a way first quarter of the beat. So I think, yeah, that's the reality. You can be leading on the top mark for having not a great start. And there were, yesterday, the majority of the races, the teams that did well on the start were winning on the top mark. The day before, the teams that we called off the start line disappeared. And we were, at the top mark going, where did you come from? What was this? So This is a race course that allows to be quite open. And meanwhile, it's looking a little bit closed for Brennensek. I'm just seeing them coming back from their early drive out, and I thought maybe they'd have an option of gaining on sled in the quantum racing, but as they come back, they definitely are well behind quantum racing, and it does look like they will, well, they're driving at the moment, so they're trying to affect sled, but I think they're still probably behind sled at the moment, so Brennensek needing to make moves through the fleet if they want to keep their overall score.
So Platoon then leading Preveza down this first run. Two Vrolik boats very even in pace. And then back to Azzurra. Brennensek really not, don't seem to have made too much of a gain for that early jibe. We're now with Phoenix, just looking at
I'm actually
Tina Plattner just settling after the jibe.
pulled out over Preveza and then a little bit.
Azzurra, the boats were a lot closer at the top mark, and without really any changes on the downwind, they all jibed at the exact same time, but it's kind of given,
they've each stretched a little bit more than the boat behind than you would normally expect, which just means they're sailing well. And I think we spoke about that with Platoon earlier, with the guys on board having a lot of time together and a lot of time with harm as well. But when it's light like this, and it's much lighter than the past 3 days have been, so maybe for Brennensek, who hasn't really been sailing together for a long time, they're not necessarily as fast, but I'm surprised that for Azzurra, I thought they would have stuck with the two leaders a bit more rather than they're falling back into the pack behind them.
Interesting, but one of the strengths in particular of the Vrolik boats has been downwind and the light. Now they have remoded the boats a little bit for a stronger breezes this season, but the feedback really was that they felt like they hadn't lost any of their light wind prowess. And that seems to be evident just now. 80 or 90 meters clear between Preveza and Azzurra.
The only two Vrolik boats in this fleet right now are the two leading this light air race. So well done to those two guys, and to, as you were saying, to them being able to pull off out the back. Brennensek has gone for a second jibe. So they jibed early on top of sled and quantum racing in here in the middle of the pack, and then they've actually just jibed out again, aiming for this bottom right looking downwind, bottom left of the course looking upwind. And this could be, we have seen them make big gains as they come into the bottom marks. The full sort of 49er style racing of Morgan Larson, the tactician, and Shimei Fantella of keeping the boat hot till the very last second. So we should keep an eye on that as they come into the bottom marks. But meanwhile, Platoon is going for their final jibe. And as I look at the marks themselves, to me it looks like left turn, right mark, right side would be the best move. But just because that mark is a little bit upwind. But for Platoon, that would be an extra maneuver than what they're on now. So I think reality is they're probably going to head straight to this left-hand mark and just go straight in and up to the left-hand side of the course.
Just a little bit of information we've just had through that
But this is it.
we didn't know previously is that Vladimir, the owner, is not on board for Ernest. He had a commitment elsewhere. So it's all down to Jimmy Fantella, who will be on the helm, as we're looking now at the rounding. In actual fact, Platoon and Privetz are going round very much at the same time. Platoon on the left-hand mark looking upwind. Privetz on the right.
Exactly, Andy. I think the difference there was that right mark being more favored. So Platoon went to the further mark and had to sail extra distance, about a boat length both ways, and it allowed Privetz to get in closer and close the gap. And then Azura now just rounding the right-hand side as well. But that gives Privetz a bit of an advantage. The next time these two boats interact, Privetz will be on starboard and Platoon on port. So Platoon's going to have to make big gains on the left to be able to get across. Meanwhile, Quantum Racing coming into this left-hand mark as well. Everyone with nice late drops today. There's a lot to play for out here, but also it's a lot lighter, so you can really hold that kite till the very last second. Well, I say that, but Sled's just gone with the touch too early drop over there on the far side. You have to go a bit earlier when you're driving, but still that was quite early on the right-hand mark for Sled. And then Phoenix coming in to the left as well. Now, the fact that we're seeing Phoenix already and we're not seeing the blue boat of Brunelesek means Brunelesek has dropped back a bit further. I think we've got Phoenix just rounding of a quite wide rounding there for Phoenix, and just behind them you're going to be able to see Brunelesek coming into picture. So not making any gains there really. Although they've put Sled behind them, but they've let Phoenix through. So they're kind of equal here for their upwind for Brunelesek, and that's not what they want. Final boat around then, Andy, is Sled going into that right-hand side. So they're not quite hearing our request that we wanted Sled to win a race today. We needed all 8 teams to win, but maybe next race.
Next race.
So as we look up the race course, big split for the leaders. Privetza and Azura still going out far to that right-hand side, and Platoon still going hard to the left-hand side. Platoon being followed by Phoenix, who's still also on starboard tack, but Quantum Racing's already tacked back. So we'll see who decides first when to come back in towards the middle, who kind of faults first a little bit, but it doesn't look like Platoon's deciding to tack anytime soon. So I'm not sure if you can see from Virtual Eye who's making gains.
Pretty steady, really. A little bit hard because we lose Sled's tracker from time to time, but looks like a little bit more pressure coming in from the right, perhaps. We're starting to see the sea breeze build. As you said, we've not raced from a 1 o'clock start so far this week, so it's been a lighter sea breeze. And usually it's been 2 o'clock when we've had our first start, sometimes even a little bit later than that. But still very, very close in terms of the regatta overall. With that 6th obviously hurting Brunelesek quite a lot just now. So looking at the standings projected, if positions stayed the same, it would be Azura 32, Preveza 34 and Branasek 35 by virtue of their present 6th place. Azura then 2 points up on Preveza. Not much that Preveza can do, really. Platoon advancing their challenge by 3 points net at the moment. 7 points behind going into this race. They would be 4 points off the lead.
Now, the one thing Preveza really wants is for Platoon to get in between them and Azura in order to beat Azura, but they also want Platoon to be further back because they're
they also want to know the lottery
on
numbers.
The scoreboard, so it's a difficult task. Yeah. Finally, Platoon going for the tack. Quite far out into this left-hand corner before they decided to go for it. And yeah, we still don't see Preveza attacking on the far side either. So the lineup, the meetup in the middle will come at some point closer to the top mark. And the guys hiking much harder now. So the little bit of breeze build that we've had even just in the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so makes it a very different race course than what we saw in the first upwind. So this will be much different for the jib trimmers and the main trimmers. The difference between powering up versus depowering is somewhere in this scenario, 11 to 13 knots. You really switch over, and you can see they've still got some of the wrinkles on the main sail of Platoon, so not quite going Cunningham on yet, not quite fully depower mode, but I think we'll see that any more puff than this, and we'll start to see that as well.
Allegra over there as well. Platoon just have pretty much a cover on the fleet. Over there we're seeing again to Preveza. Preveza push out to the right, and Platoon, as I say, have stayed a little bit more left since that leeward gate rounding. Converging now, we've just seen Preveza attack a while ago, or just a few minutes ago. See how the advantage fares for Platoon. May see some gain over on that right side. Remember, Preveza profited there on the first upwind. They started at the committee boat and were out to the right. Certainly, according to Virtual, we're seeing a gain back to Preveza. Jenny, I don't know what you think.
I think to eye, it looks like that as well. I think we're over on the left-hand side. Platoon's not really got a good angle out here. They don't look super bow up, to Preveza at least. They might still have Azura, but having been the leaders around the top mark, having made that choice to go to the right mark on the downwind, the left mark looking upwind, when they had the opportunity, if they'd wanted, to jibe and go left mark and head to the kind of the favored mark and perhaps the favored side of the course. This is on Platoon. They clearly wanted the left, and if they faltered and the right was a gain, then that's the fault of their own decision making as they came in on those bottom marks, and I think that'll be a hard one. Although, as we say that, just now Preveza's bows come down just a little bit, so it could be that there's still right shifts out on the right-hand corner of this race course, and then as they come back more towards the middle, they're just getting the bow down of the lefty. So we'll see when they converge. It's hard to tell, but Platoon just made man back move. So they had a guy, I couldn't see quite from here who it is, but someone who was hiking hard, 2 people from the bow just got out of hiking position in the bow and went to the stern and is hiking off completely off of the stern now. So they've making the moves to breeze building all the time here.
So a question for us from Rob on Facebook, what the speeds are going upwind. There you can see it from our wonderful friends at Virtual Eye, 8.5, 8.3, up to 9 knots times. A little bit more when the breeze is fresher, but here's a very graphic example of your answer. We can't see the the numbers on board. We do an occasional glimpse, but one thing that Guy was telling us a couple of days ago, Guy Barron, who's racing on board the Preveza today, was that the telemetry from the instruments on board all the boats to their chase boats, so they know all the numbers all the time. And they gather all the data, crunch it in the early evening and debrief. All the teams having different data gathering companies and data analysts and coaches. So looking like a possible gain out on that right side to Quantum as well, according to Virtual. That right side might be coming in quite strong, and maybe that Quantum are through Platoon. Hard to see really on the Virtual or by eye. What are your thoughts, Jenny? Again to Quantum. Certainly they're close on Platoon.
I don't know if they would. I don't know if they would be all the way through Platoon. From eye, it looks like that would be a big ask, but that's a huge move. If so, I mean, Quantum currently, shockingly, is sitting 7th on the leaderboard and 1 point from being in last. So for having done decently in the first regatta of the year here, they had a 3rd place, I think, in Mahon, but they've got a lot of new guys on board and they're finding their feet or needing to find their feet again, and they haven't necessarily been able to do so very easily this weekend. So I think for them to feel confident going into the next events, they need to put together a solid final day today. Meanwhile, just watching the middle of the race course, Azura has just sort of lee-sterned Platoon, which is a term I don't like to use because it's a term that should really never be used in sailboat racing, but unclear as to, they must think it's windier than I seem to think it is, and they themselves where I would say Platoon's bad air is, but perhaps it's a tiny bit of a left shift and they just really needed their boat to be on port tack, and here's the convergence of Platoon and Preveza as we're coming up the course, and it actually looks like Platoon still has Preveza, not easily, but crossing relatively easily. And in fact, below them, I know you said you don't have the tracker of Sled, so below them, Sled just crossing the bow of Quantum racing there. So I don't think it's been the big gain to the right that it was looking like early on. I think Sled had rounded the bottom mark and last, and the fact that they're now ahead of Quantum means they're no longer last. Whether that last place goes to Quantum or perhaps goes to Peninasec or even Alegre over here on the left-hand side, slightly unclear. We'll have to see when they all come together later. Meanwhile, Platoon letting Azura off the hook a little bit, giving Azura clear air as they tack back to come back and interact again with Preveza. I think we should see Platoon lee bow Preveza here. In fact, they're not lee bowing, so JK playing his own game a little bit, and they've done well so far with the shifts on the first upwind, and it looks like here with the shifts on the second upwind. So that's just confidence in their ability and their own numbers to play their game as they'd like, rather than covering the red boat behind them.
Indeed. Looking at the points table again, Azura would be leading by 2 points after this race. Said Platoon closing the gap to 4 points between them and the Royal Cup leaders, Azura. A little bit of attacking match going on between the top two. on the face of Preveza. Preveza respond and tack behind. This, in the meantime, has to be to the good of Azzurra.
And it looks now as well like it's such a big left shift. I mean, you can see how bowed down the boats are here on starboard tack compared to the angle that they were last time coming into the top mark. So no surprise then that it was a good gain for Platoon getting out to the left and coming back on that left shift. And now they're just all having to fight their way to the top mark. You don't want to be spending a lot of time on starboard here, but you kind of have to because got to get around the mark somehow. But Sled, meanwhile, is coming into the fold a little bit more than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Again, I know you guys can't see them on the tracker, so I think they're just underneath Azzurra's line. They've crossed Brunelesec, so still ahead of Brunelesec. I think they've gained over Phoenix and gained over Allegra as well. So maybe Sled moving all the way up into 4th place from what was last at the bottom marks. There goes Platoon final, second to last tack before what should be their ley line tack coming up soon. I think they'll leave Preveza alone here and just go for their own ley line. Preveza probably will have to do the same. You'd want them to be able to defend against Azzurra, but Azzurra is quite far back now in 3rd place.
Indeed, so what a great race though, all in all. 2 winners, top 2 boats in Mahon, battling out in this penultimate race here at the Royal Cup in Puerto Sherry. Azzurra not too far behind, still currently the regatta leaders, or would be the regatta leaders, going into the final race. Unfortunately, there you see it, Brunelesec down in 7th. So talk us around the weather, Mark.
Now this is interesting. Platoon has gone quite far and overstood this top mark by a large amount. I was saying there was a left shift and it was hard to get on starboard, but Preveza coming in might even be able to have the lee bow. We'll see if they going. They don't quite have it, but they looked like they had it for a second there. They've made big gains though in that last little bit, and if they execute a really nice tack here, they'll be right on the stern of Platoon. So again, the same rounding order then as last time, but Platoon just able to hold off after having rounded the bottom mark simultaneously. Preveza now, the red boat, the Turkish team, rounding into 2nd place, just 1 boat length off the back of Platoon. And then you can see a bit of a gap. The Vrolik boats making some big gains over Azzurra. Azzurra now bow number 3 into 3rd place around the top mark, but they'll be about 5, 6, 7 boat lengths off the leaders. And I think for Azzurra, as you said, it puts them into the lead overall, so they'll be happy with this. A 3rd place is still a 3rd place, and any points less is good. I think they're probably seeing the blue boat deep behind them and excited about that. But as they come around, this is Azzurra with 6 boat lengths to the front 2, and only 2 boat lengths to the guys behind. So not much that they can do on the downwind to make any gains going forward, although they'll probably still try for it. We know Santi Honge likes to fight to the end, as does Guillermo Parada. So any less points they could put on the score going in the final race, they would. And then Sled, as we said, just rounded the top mark into 4th. So Sled with huge moves on that upwind to get themselves from 8th to 4th. I think the right side did work out for them, whereas Quantum Racing leads Brunelesec, and Brunelesec unfortunately sitting there in 6th place, not helping themselves on the overall leaderboard.
What a great race this is proving to be. We talked so much about the top 3 boats, and here comes Platoon leading down the final run and bringing themselves very much into contention for the Royal Cup. Royal Cup won last year by Luna Rossa. I don't think that Platoon have won it before. Azura have it for sure. I think in Miami, I think probably 2013, something like that. It's going to be a fabulous finale, a great last race. Hopefully, Jenny, maybe they'll wait, give us half an hour of breathing space in between races just to let the breeze build. But you never know.
Yeah. I think it's to let the tensions build as well. I mean, Azura, if they lead into the final race by those 4 points, but Platoon's just proving they can nip at the heels, and Brunelesek as well, then all of those guys probably fighting just to want to get off the line again. But yeah, it's nice to have that tiny bit of breathing room in between races for the breeze to build even more out here on the Bay of Cadiz. And I think you can see it was windy on that upwind and teams are hiking, but it still isn't the breeze that we had yesterday afternoon on the downwinds. Body still in, not quite able to pump on the waves yet.
Wind reading off the committee boat, I think was 9 knots was the last thing we had transmitted to us. But once again, interesting to reflect that, again, it's not the team which won the start, which is winning the race. And we've seen that so many times over the course of this regatta. Race number 9 of 10.
Still doesn't hurt to get a good start, though.
No, of course not.
And Azura both were the teams we were talking about. Yeah.
But it's been, it's been the opportunity and the, after the first third, between the first third and the first half, quite often it's shaped the beat. And the positions on the at the top mark, much more so than getting a good start. We have seen it. I mean, like yesterday, obviously, with Phoenix 11 started off the committee boat and went right. Watching the Platoon team there.
I'm not sure if you can see it by eye when you're looking at Platoon team, but it really looks like they are right in the tide difference between this light-colored water to their west or their south, and the darker water to their north and above them. And that's, we know, sailing an hour earlier here, the tide hadn't quite switched as early as it was yesterday, so we haven't really been sailing in the ebb tide yet. And now, I don't know, I can see it from eye, so I'm sure even more so from the drone shots or something, you would really see the dark water over to Platoon and the light water over on this side of the race course, and that'll change the dynamics on the course for sure. I mean, the overstanding the top mark ley line will come back into play in the next race, whereas this race we saw teams having to tack up to that ley line and not getting any current assistance at all. And I think a little bit it would change my dynamics on this race course as well. I would perhaps want to be, if I knew, I would want to be jiving earlier, getting out of this and staying in that flat current or the kind of the darker water that isn't against you on the downwind. And yet nobody's jived. One team has jived out the back. So Sled has jived out the back, but Brunelesek, the team that normally does jive early, they lost so much on the last downwind with that jibe that they are holding fire and keeping their positioning with the rest of the fleet rather than rolling the dice.
This is looking very much like a win for Platoon, though.
Platoon just dropping their jibe in there, and the interesting part, Andy, is they're early of ley line. So they went early, maybe deciding they'd rather go now and not have Preveza jibe on them. But that gives a little bit of opportunity to Preveza to go pick the proper ley line and jibe once. And Platoon for sure will have more jibes in it before the finish. Although Preveza rolling up their staysail right now means they're going to be going for it soon. So Hamish Pepper, calling for the jibe. But probably happy to stick with second place. There's no reason to be pushing the cart too far here when you're still close overall.
Did Preveza just complete their jibe? We mentioned a few of the Turkish sailors on board Preveza are not there. They have had to return to Turkey for a national vote, which is the same as it was at this point on this corresponding day last year in Zadar. It would have been. So as I said, the Guy Barron, who's our colour commentator, we're fortunate enough to have him, is back on board, as indeed another couple of the good shore team guys are. It's very, very close between Preveza and Platoon now, looking at the virtual. How do you see it, Jenny?
I was just thinking that's interesting if Preveza's been able to make gains from kind of underneath there, but it does really look like Preveza's sailing a lot lower than Platoon, and Platoon, yeah, a lot deeper, exactly. That early jibe scared me with Platoon. It scares me for two reasons. They do have to do more maneuvers later on, and it just, we haven't seen that side of the course work out well today. We saw it be a big loss for Brunellesek earlier, so giving up that lead, well, not necessarily giving up that lead, but making that decision when they made it against Preveza was, instead of being aggressive, was not really defensive either. It was just a strange call in a way. Meanwhile, back of the pack here, not back of the pack, but in fourth place, Sled looks like they're really putting some moves on Azura a little bit. Sled sailing really hot to try to get on Azura's bad air. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but that could be interesting if they come in the fold and they get over Azura. In fact, I think there's at least a nice little battle there that could affect the overall standings, and it very much looks like Sled has the potential to be crawling over the top of them.
May be that Preveza can just make the left-hand end of the line, the boat end of the line. I think they're soaking low enough just now, Jenny.
You know, they are soaking much lower than Platoon, but I don't know that it's low enough to make the left-hand end of the line. It doesn't look like it to me, which is fine as well. If Platoon then jibes and is still ahead, and there's more starboard jibe in it, then Preveza could jibe on top and give them bad air and hope to roll them right at the finish line. So for Preveza, in some ways, that's the two strategies. One is just sail less distance, soak down, get through the line while while Platoon still has another maneuver to make. I can't tell if it's just our position changing, making it look a bit more like they just heated up, or whether they actually did just heat up a touch towards Platoon's
Preveza
stern.
have just heated up very slightly. I think they were just getting too slow, coming up to meet Platoon a little bit. Maximum concentration then.
Hamish is
Go on, Jenny.
hearing me on board, or maybe Sci-Fi, their downwind trimmer, they're hearing me on board. If you're not going to make it the strategy one, then the more offensive strategy is strategy two. Heat up and go for it.
If anything, Platoon are actually opening distance as they do that. It's all about the angle to the direct distance to the finish line at the moment in terms of the virtual. And as soon as Preveza heat up, then the advantage goes to Platoon. In the meantime, Azura coming out to the right, looking downwind. Sled.
I think Sled might have. I was
Sled
an
making a
eye
gain there.
forward, but I think Sled might have. Yeah, I think Sled might have actually gotten over the top of them and forced Azura out to that jibe. I really didn't. I was so focused on Platoon and Prevets, I didn't see it happen. I didn't see why Azura went for that jibe. But we know that Sled had been inching forward on them earlier, so maybe that was a force, and maybe Sled's moved into this third place and mixing up the scoreline a little bit for us.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
It'd be great for us. Don't know if it'd make the Italians that happy.
Anyway, Platoon's final
So
jibe,
here goes
Jenny.
Platoon into the jibe. Exactly, and I think here's the question: how does Preveza play this? Do they jibe on top? Do they try to hit their air? Do they then have room and opportunity on the other jibe before jibing back, or do they think Preveza's gone too early here? Which maybe it looks like they have. Preveza actually are not laying the finish line on this jibe. So Platoon is not. So you can see Preveza actually is just heated up here. Is taking the stern. That's how big a gain they had, though. They're actually having to heat up to take the stern of Platoon. Next time they interact, Preveza will have starboard advantage if they can make that happen outside of the finish line. Then that's really good for them. And if not, then right now it's about calling which end of the line you want. And we're just rocking ourselves down to the finish line at the moment. It looks maybe like boat end is favored. So if you're Preveza, you're happy to sort of sail to the favorite end of the line and hope for the best. But I think this might still go the way of Platoon, because Platoon, well, we're going to have to see. Preveza pulling off their jibe here. Let's see how good their jibe is. And then next, it's going to be Platoon pulling off their own jibe. And whoever does the maneuvers better and then does the speed build better afterwards is going to be the one who takes this finish. And at the moment, Preveza coming in straight. They have called their ley line pretty nicely for middle of the line, if not to pin. Platoon is the one jibing in right now at the pin end of the line. Oh, it's so close, Andy. Platoon finishing their jibe here. Needs to gain speed first and then bear away. Do you think? I think it's Platoon. Yeah, I think it's Platoon there at the pin. They're giving the... Wow. There's some high fives on board Platoon, but my goodness, that was a nail biter.
I mean, credit to Preveza taking it to them in the final 200 or 300 meters in that last maneuver. And meantime, Harmüller Speer looking back up the course to see where everybody else is finished. But that certainly does them a little bit of good. So Platoon get it just by a whisker from Preveza. And it's going to be close with Azura and Sled coming in, I think. Side by side.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing for Sled, the move from 8th to 3rd. And Sled, if they do take this, if they do take the 3rd over Azura, mixing up the scoreline even more, making it even closer for us into this final race with Azura, maybe only a 1-point advantage going into it. But I think Sled has this. I think
Sled are going faster.
Yeah. Azura going for a last-minute jibe here. In fact, Azura going to have to protect against Quantum Racing. Coming in from the left-hand side, Quantum Racing jibing with speed. Azura quite slow out of that jibe. Sled has just crossed the line. Azura is going to be able to get across right in front of Quantum, but Quantum making a hard last-minute drive for 4th position there, finishing in 5th as they cross the line. And then the questions behind that is how deep has Brennensek dropped off the top of the leaderboard today, through the fleet as we go. And yeah, Phoenix is about to be crossing in 6th. And I'm not even sure if Brennensek's got Allegre. Allegre might be, yep, Brennensek taking the stern of Allegre at the moment. So deep race here for the leaders at the top this morning, Andy.
Indeed, as we said at the start of the day, that it's as easy to get a big score. We saw that with Azura yesterday, with that going 2-8 yesterday, and unfortunately that's what's happened with Brennensek coming away with an 8th when really they wanted a top 2, top 3 result to keep themselves in contention. But what a fantastic race, really. Place is changing all the way to the finish. Sled pipping Azura, and Platoon just holding off Preveza by just a bow fitting. Let's have a very quick look at the points table after that race number 9. Hopefully we can see the points after 9 races, with Azura leading into the final race by 1 point, 33 versus 34. Platoon get up to third, 36 points, so they're only 3 points behind. Brennesek still in it, 3 points behind. Then Sled on 40, Allegra 47, Quantum Racing on 48, Phoenix 11 on 50. But an absolutely nail-biting race, Jenny, all the way to the finish.
I mean, it couldn't have been closer than that finish. I don't think you and I were calling different teams as they crossed the line. So spectacular, spectacular finish there. And I think the reality is, we were talking about it earlier, Platoon hasn't been remarkable all week long, but you don't have to be remarkable to be in the hunt. You just got to be consistent. And it was good to see them take a win like that, to be happy about it afterwards. I think we don't often see that much emotion from them, but when it's that hard-fought a battle, I think you've got to see some smiles and some high fives. And I think setting up for such a spectacular actual final showdown.
Just looking very quickly at the circuit standings, just as an aside, going into this final race, Provezza leading the circuit on 63 points, Platoon 64, and Azura 71. So Provezza in the box seat just now, as they have been for the last couple of days in terms of the circuit standings, and that really, I mean, the Royal Cup is the bonus, the big trophies are a bonus over the course of the season, but it really is about the circuit title. Let's have a look back at that race number 9 of 10, and this was the start. Remember, Azura really did win the pin, coming right in on the boat with pace on the gun. Quantum Racing a little bit slow off the line and ducking behind. Up on the right-hand end of the line, well, we saw Provezza starting quite nicely with pace, and that was how it looked after a few seconds. Well, we thought Azura really were launched, and they were. You can see Brennesek dropping back into the pack early on. Provezza going very nicely in the first few minutes as well. Then there was just looking at Platoon there. So there's a reminder that Platoon tacked out to the right fairly early, and really were not on our radar at that point. This was the moment where Provezza tacked on top of Azura. That's when Azura started to lose, really. They were bounced back to the left. They had to tack, and the advantage then really was with Provezza. Then next move is we see Platoon tacking underneath Azura. Again, Azura bounced off, having to go back to the left, and the right side is generally favoured. We see that in the next few seconds. Azura could not live there for very long, and forced to tack off. And then at the second, this is the approach to the mark. Then it was really between Platoon and Provezza. Little match race in the final approach, and at the top mark it was Platoon leading Provezza. The two Vrolik boats almost overlapped at the first windward mark, Platoon leading. Tacks on the upwind. Then down the run, initially it was a straight set for everyone. Brennesek desperately trying to find something, jibed off early if we remember. And here we are at this leeward gate, splitting the leaders with Provezza going round the right-hand mark, looking upwind, slightly slower. And here we see Platoon, John Kostecki looking upwind. Platoon the leaders then. We kind of felt there was some gain to Provezza out on the right side. We saw that for a while. But there you see it, getting up the second beat. Platoon actually quite nicely in control. Going around the top mark, it was still close, but Platoon leading. Nice set from them with Provezza pushing hard down the run. This is the second run. Meantime, Azura have dropped back a little bit. This is where the challenge really does start from Sled. Quite a light wind run. We're probably only talking about 8 or 9 knots. The Platoon and Provezza both looking a little bit quicker than their rivals behind. We're watching Sled getting inside Azura. Then at the finish, it was so close. So hard to call, but it was just a little surge from Platoon. Harm Muller Spear bringing the bow down, getting through the finish line to record that victory. Provezza getting second, and then remember, it was the battle between Sled and Azura. Azura third all the way around the course, and then just losing out in the final few metres. So they're a reminder of the standings. Azura then go into this final race of the Royal Cup. 33 points, Pravetsa 34, Platoon 36, and Brunasek on 36. So really you would have to say that going into the final race of the Royal Cup, that these 4 boats, in fact half the fleet, are contenders to win. And let's wait and see how we get on. It's going to be a fabulous finale. Join us again in a few minutes. We'll go into the big final decider for the Royal Cup in just a few seconds. So join us again in a few minutes. Sorry. Welcome back to the finale, the big showdown for the 52 Super Series Puerto Sherry Royal Cup, and we're going right into the start with 45 seconds to go. We can see Brunelesek down towards the pin end of the line. Hopefully we're picking up Jenny Tulloch. Jenny, talk us through the start.
Yeah,
with 30
I mean,
seconds
the
to start.
showdown it is. Azura only 33 points, 1 point ahead of Preveza, 3 points ahead of Brunelesek, and with 25 seconds to go, Azura and Brunelesek fighting it out at the pin end here. Brunelesek forcing Azura to attack. Azura's got plenty of distance to Quantum Racing, but Quantum Racing going to defend hard, bow down hard at Azura. Actually, it's going to be difficult for Azura here. They're in a tight spot. The overall leaders on the leaderboard possibly going to be fouling Quantum Racing here, forcing Brunelesek back over. 3 seconds to go. 2, 1. Azura is slow at the top of the line. 09 sled at the boat. Phoenix in the middle. Phoenix may even have been over early. They were so close to the line. And Azura, who's leading overall by 1 point, actually just squeaking through. Interestingly, no flags on. Oh, we've got a flag on the umpire boat. Blue and white and blue. I'm not actually familiar with that flag myself, Andy. What does blue, white, blue mean on the umpire boat?
Not sure.
It might just be that umpire boat doesn't have the typical green flag, because green flag sometimes is green and white, and they've put it up and they've put it back down. So I think that was a no harm, no foul, which means Azura just got away with it, sneaking through cleanly. And while the fight this morning was between Azura and Brunelesek just had that 8th place finish in the first race today. Has dropped them down to tied for 3rd overall, and I think realistically Preveza is looking good up there as well, middle of the course, the red boat, who are sitting 2nd, just 1 point back of Azura.
And once again we're seeing Preveza lining up alongside Platoon, and also as you said, Brunelesek lining up against Azura, but so a fantastic finale. Really, you couldn't hope for more. Sled with a key position on the committee boat, end of the line. Platoon not quite as good off the start line, just dropped back. And the advantage, as you said, Jenny, really is with Preveza in that battle. But looking good just now for Azura, just have managed to squeeze a little bit of pace on and move forward on Quantum. And they also have no big problems just now from Brunelesek, who are sailing a little bit deeper, trying to get some speed. Still relatively light. 8 or 9 knots, I think, probably.
Oh, we might even be up to 10, 11, 12 knots now. You've got all the bodies hiking over the side here. You can see Brunelesek hiking hard, and I think impressively, Azura has been able to hold that position just to windward of Brunelesek. As you said, they've kind of squished Quantum out the back. Quantum's not a threat to the overall scores here, but Azura and Quantum always have a little mini battle between the two of them. But you can just see the bow of Azura sort of sneaking out over the top of Brunelesek, meaning they really did pull off that start, that 2 tacks super last minute within the final 30 seconds, and the ability to then execute a speed build with a boat underneath you, having had been under the pressure that they had at that start. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Guillermo Parada. He's not an America's Cup winner, he's not an Olympic medalist, but he really did nail that start in terms of, you say, the finesse of the speed build in the final seconds. Their big problem just now, though, is having Phoenix to weather of them. Quantum now flipping over, and Brunelesek have also tacked. Question for Azura really is what they do from that position, Jenny.
I mean, the hard part is they sort of had this similar start last time.
Yeah.
They won the pin in, they looked good early, and then the middle came good. And I think that's sometimes the hard part of winning the pin, is you're so dictated by the boats to your right. They're controlling you, and you'd rather almost be in the controlling position of Phoenix or of Preveza, as they were last race, than Azura, because as you see right now, just when that tiny bit of the right shift comes, the middle pays. Azura's got nowhere to go, and the only thing they could do is either tack and duck everyone or wait for everyone to tack off their quarter, and that's what allowed them, that's what forced them into 3rd position last time rather than leading at the top marks. And it looks like here Phoenix has the really good positioning, but Preveza just on their stern, also still in control of Azura.
Just watching there as we see on board with Brunelesek, Tacking. You know what language they work in mostly, but I think it's primarily English. But they're a little bit a
On board
little back
Azura.
of the fleet.
Oh, I'm pretty
No,
sure
sorry,
Santi's got some
no, that
good
was on board
Spanish.
Brunelesec, yeah.
Copy.
The early advantages to Allegro, who have gone out to the right. Azura looking a little bit slow down in that left-hand corner. The battle for the Royal Cup is between 5th place Azura, 6th place Preveza, 7th place Brunelesec and 8th place Platoon on the early standings on this first beat of the last race. Very quick projection, Azura on top going into this race by 1 point ahead of Preveza. You have to say that really depends how Preveza can get out, sorry, how Azura can get out of this corner, or indeed they may prefer this side.
I'm trying to remember, Andy, the memory banks are struggling at the end of this regatta. The
much
first
younger than me.
upwind for the last race, they went left, I know. But the second upwind, do you remember, was Azura also headed out to the left-hand side on the second upwind?
I remember they split, yeah, they were left of middle certainly, but you know, the key thing that we just saw in the replay on the last race was how Platoon got out to the right quite early. They just were behind sled, got out to the right early, and that was where they made their gain. Remember, they popped up just ahead of Preveza, kind of almost out of the blue, and that was their key move.
Well, and Sled did the same. They used that right-hand side to their advantage on the upwind and moved well through the fleet. I think 7th to ultimately finish 3rd, but at least 4th at the top mark. So I'm a bit worried for Azura here with the so confident in the left. It's not necessarily like the left has been paying.
It's the second time they've started at the pin, really. As you said, your problem is you really have to have a lot of confidence in that side, or know that you've got the speed to get across the fleet.
Well, here's the moment of truth, the question mark. They've flopped over. And I think at the moment they must think that they're crossing. It did look like Preveza was bow down to them a little bit. It does look like they think they're across Preveza. There is a boat to windward of Preveza. I can't see who that is, Andy, but
I have them crossing,
that boat might be a...
Well, there you go. That's interesting, because at the same time Platoon have tacked at the same time as Preveza. Azura actually have picked up a little bit of pressure, I think. Just gaining a little bit of gauge on Preveza. And they really actually looks quite good for Azura relative to Brunelesec. Virtual has
well, Azura would be happy with this. They've got all 4
boats
of
in the same corner.
Contenders all right in their left-hand side. Yeah. They almost could forget about the rest of the fleet as long as they've got Platoon behind them, Preveza covered by them, and Brunelesec in their sort of leeward bow. They're happy with that. Whether or not they actually come back into the other fleet well in the mix of the other fleet, or whether they come back behind, will be quite interesting to see. But this is the 4 leaders. Platoon's tacking here. And I was going to say the hard part for Platoon is there's just not that much more runway out to the left. So you just hold there. You hope that your boat speed is good. And right now, at the moment, their boat speed looks good over Brunelesec. Brunelesec kind of the only tiny bit of a threat, because they're a little bit bow forward. If they get any righty, they could come back and attack on starboard. But I think this is comfy days for Azura at the moment.
That'll be the curse of the commentator.
Right as I say that, Brunelesec really starts poking their bow out the front, don't they?
We kind of shot ourselves in the foot before, didn't we? When we were bigging up that big big battle between the Olympic medalists. And you rightly remind us, of course, Kosteki's got one himself, so one better than Chuck Cutler. We may have any more questions coming in. Get them in early because this is going to get more exciting as the race goes on. So if you've got any questions, post them on Facebook or any of our social network channels. Let's see if we've got anything coming in just now. Nice shot there of Zura in control at the moment. The question is, are there a lot of protests in the water? Well, we do invest very heavily in a number of top quality umpires. They travel with us to each and every event. We try to keep the same umpiring team through the season. That means that the umpires get to know the different sailors, their modus operandi, if you like, and similarly the umpires achieve a level of respect and understanding from the sailors. But that really is the emphasis, that any rule questions are asked on the water and the umpires make the decisions immediately, and there's a penalty or no penalty. So the whole ethos, the whole idea is that we don't have protests. So meantime, that right side looking good, but the battle for the Royal Cup is on this left side. Azura have the upper hand with Brunelesek to leeward. Preveza kind of in their hip pocket behind them. And I think the threat, such as it is, probably slightly more from platoon. As Ken said, no more runway to windward for them in terms of trying to get any more leverage. But I think you'd be quite happy just now if you're Azura, Jenny.
Yeah, I do think they are still happy. I mean, Platoon's starting to look more and more of a threat out here on the left. They've got good breeze and good angle, but Platoon does sit 3 points back from Azura. The biggest competitors for Azura at the moment is Preveza, and Preveza, they really have them squarely right in their sights, just to leeward. And maybe Preveza's just bow enough forward that they're not in the bad air of Azura. They've clearly been sitting there for almost a quarter of the beat, so they seem to be happy with where they are, and they don't look like they're suffering for speed. So Azura, yeah, just keeping them in their pocket and keeping an eye on Brunelesek and Platoon, and that's all they can ask for. But I think the reality is Brunelesek looks like they've gained some boat lengths forward from Azura. So whether that's just because they've been in bow down mode and Azura's been bow up mode is unclear. But earlier it looked more like those three were compressed together. Now it looks more like Brunenesek's put 2 or 3 boat lengths forward on Azura.
Interesting to see Sled in third coming into play, if you like, on that left side of the course. Seem to favour the right early on. Now they've had the opportunity to come out to the left and may start to affect Platoon. May just come into this battle and affect it, but for the moment Sled are third.
Oh, if only Sled could listen to us and turn that third into a first place, Sandy. Well, there goes Sled tacking. Quantum Racing has also just simultaneously tacked in the middle of the pack, and far right, I mean, running away with this race, it looks like, is Alegre. So Alegre's had such an up and down regatta so far. They're sitting 6th overall on 47 points. They've won a race on day 2, but they've gotten a couple 7ths as well, 3 7ths as well. So, a couple 8ths as well. So they've just been a little bit inconsistent, and I think perhaps they've liked the right and really banged the right like they just did, and at times it didn't work out. But at this point in time, it's looking really good.
Phoenix also mid-fleet just now. may also be Quantum Racing finishing on a little bit of a high note for them. They seem to be quite nicely positioned in second. But these other boats starting to come into play in the mix as we look at the battle between these 3 or 4 boats for the Royal Cup, the regatta title. As the fleet converges towards the weather mark, we're seeing a little bit of a gain to Brunello, Jenny, coming in on the left.
Yeah, it looks like Azura did do the tack up. So they tacked up to Platoon's line and they let Brunello go. And Brunello had been gaining all the time, sailing faster forward, as we'd spoke about earlier. And I think faster forward and got into that righty that's worked so well for Allegre and Quantum. I mean, if you think about that start, how deep Quantum Racing was behind the stern of Azura.
Yeah.
Azura really sent them out the back and forced them to tack out. And now if you're Azura, you're maybe kicking yourself a little bit that you didn't see this right coming in as hard as it has. Especially knowing that we were still in such a left breeze strength. We were starting this race in 220, similar to what we started the last race in. And yet the westerly, the Poniente run, should be something more like 240. So somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, you are expecting that big right shift, and it looks like it's come through and it's happened here, and it's done so for the full effect of Allegre to be getting close to this top mark with an almost 10-15 boat length, biggest lead we've seen this regatta by miles. And yeah, if you're anyone, you're kicking yourself that you didn't tack early with them or with Quantum Racing, because it's allowing those guys to really get up to the front. I think the reality is Azura falling back a bit more, losing to Brunello, tacking here with Platoon, but they've got to just keep their eye on Provezza as well, and instead they let Provezza get out to the right.
That's going to be interesting, yeah. In fact, just now Brunello tacking ahead of, or I think we'll probably tack on Provezza. Let's wait and see that one. Provezza behind the Brunello just now. The Brunello are going to come out of this on top of that challenging group, the group who are chasing the Royal Cup. Platoon ending up way out to that left side and the wrong side of this shift you're talking about, Jenny.
And as we get to the top mark here on the right hand side, on the right side of this right-hand shift, it is Allegre, the British team, skippered by Andy Soriano, the owner, and Andy Horton doing tactics with Kelvin on strategy and Will Best on nav. They have absolutely nailed this, and we've seen them round this top mark a number of times in first, actually, in this regatta. Once or twice, they then drop through the pack. So I think it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to lead all the way around, but this is a huge lead at the moment. I mean, they have probably 10 or 15 boat lengths here to Quantum Racing behind them in second place. Quantum Racing just going into the tack now. Allegre still won't have quite rounded the top mark, but Quantum much closer to the pack behind them. And I think we've said already, they've had a tough week here so far. They're sitting second last, and they'll be happy to put the score on the board. They could then move up, except Allegre is the one boat who's in front of them. It's the one boat who's in front of them on the leaderboard. So Quantum needs to change that around for their scores to change overall. But Quantum rounding second here gives us a view to who's coming up behind. And it looks like Brunello Sled leading Brunello. Outside of the two of them is Phoenix. Provezza going for a big dip of Brunello, but the problem, Azura also having to dip all of these boats, and I think has just given away 3 places there. They've given away Brunello, they've given away Provezza, and interestingly, they might even let Platoon in here. Yeah, so this is Azura actually just tacking in there inside of Provezza, so sneaking it in might be okay there on Provezza then, because that's the one boat who sits very close to them on the scores. But it's Sled rounding here for third. Sled in the white hull for third. Phoenix bow 11 rounding for fourth. Brunello squeezing up from what wasn't a great start, squeezing up into fifth here, using that right side to their advantage. Azura did tack inside Provezza, and I think they will just be able to get around, bow around, and actually they might be able to keep their breeze clear in front of Provezza, but that is going to be a very, very close downwind for those two boats who are fighting at the top of the leaderboard, Azura and Provezza here. This is amazing to see how close they are on this downwind, and I think it's going to be all about crew maneuvering, getting these kites up beautifully, and we could maybe expect it to go well for Azura because they've been such a sharp team all the time, and Provezza's got a couple new crew on board, as we said today, even some shore team subbing in for guys who are back in Turkey dealing with the elections, but it doesn't mean they didn't have a good race last race, and it doesn't necessarily mean they couldn't have a great one now, but behind them, Platoon in 8th overall. So it's funny that the racing for the overall is back in 6th, 7th, and 8th here today, but such is racing, I guess, Andy.
That's right. I mean, the key thing for Berenasek in particular, and also Platoon, is that they need boats in between them and the regatta leaders, or Azura, if they're going to have a chance of taking the title. Meantime, Azura just can not exactly afford to, but they can consolidate a little bit. As long as they're within this group, then they should be okay. Certainly they're okay at the moment by 3 points. There's the projected points table. Azura leading. If the position stayed the same, he would win this regatta by 3 points ahead of Provezza.
So there goes Azura for the jibe. I was wondering when, it's such a big right shift, when these guys were going to flop. You could see leaders Quantum Racing and Allegra had already jibed out in the back. Azura just decided to, and they were matched by Provezza. So Provezza jibing simultaneously with them, trying to get on their breeze. Whether or not it's actually light enough for them to be able to, we'll watch and see. But both of them will be a little bit affected by Phoenix, who jibed well earlier and is high of the two of them, giving them bad air.
So there's definitely a split in the fleet, with the top 3, top 4 boats splitting away from the battle for the Royal Cup between the 5th, 6th and 7th and 8th placed boats. Berenasek, Azura, Provezza, Platoon, all battling for the title of the second regatta of the 52 Super Series 2019 season. Azura still just have the upper hand. They need to stick with Berenasek. Berenasek need boats between them and Azura. So too does Platoon. Platoon, who were first in that last race, 8th in this race. Armmuller Spreer said at the start of the week, some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail. Some races you're the hammer, some days you're the nail. And there we go. First in one race, 8th just now. And of course, as we said at the top of the back end of the last program, it's always about the series, and coming away with an 8th. When you're battling for a title, or you're in this title battle, then that's expensive. So projected points totals then, if the position stayed the same through to the finish line. Azura 39. Well, actually, there you go, changes as we watch. 40, 41, 41, 43.
So I think that change might have just come because Azura just jibed. So yeah, whether Provezza was actually getting over the top of them, it was hard to see from here. I'm so far away from where they are on the course, but Azura's definitely jibed away from Provezza, and I think probably you wouldn't want to. If you look in front of them to Phoenix's line, Phoenix looks like they've gotten even more of a right shift. So jiving away from that right shift is an unfortunate situation for Azura to be in. But as you said with Azura, if Provezza gets just ahead of them, then the two of them would tie, I assume, and Azura beats the tiebreak because they've won 2 races. So Azura is okay if they just lose Preveza by one place, if they just swap, but they're not okay if they keep falling back through the pack and there's a point in between them.
Wow, what a race. That split between Azura and Preveza just now. All in the balance. Preveza making the gain for the moment. Very, very close. Huge amount of tension on board. We're going past sled there, bow number 5. 5th in the regatta. They could make 4th quite easily. Only gentle conditions looking at Preveza coming downwind. Azura still working to the right. Jenny, how's it looking for Azura, do you think?
You know, I don't love it out here on the right-hand side. It feels really light. I think they were forced this way rather than necessarily wanting to come this way. The strange part to me was we knew there was that right shift. A lot of guys jibed early. Then they're sitting on the right shift, and yet Platoon didn't go with it. And Platoon's normally, screw the fleet, I'm going to think about the numbers and what job we want to be on.
Yeah.
But the other thing Platoon wanted was to split from Preveza and Azura, so they might have been happy just to roll the dice with the split, and it looks like they've made gains as they did so on Azura. Azura coming back well behind Platoon there in that last crossing, so
that's
Azura needs...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's the thing, that's the dilemma. Do you throw the dice, or if you like, you just split from the fleet with the hope of gaining 3 or 4 places and potentially jeopardizing the title, but making places for the overall? And I think Platoon would normally expect them to do that kind of thing. But just now, Renesek looking pretty good down the middle. Preveza out on that left side in the shift. I think we're going to see Preveza coming out of this slightly better.
I think they've done everything that they could do to attack here. They jibed on Azura right when they wanted to. They were both quite early to jibe to stick with that shift, and they were somehow probably able to execute to get over the top of Azura to force Azura to jibe back to this side, and thus that allowed them to keep that starboard, well, keep that right-hand side of the race course, which has been favored on this race so far. And I think it looks good again. I mean, when you look at the guys out there on the far right-hand side, their bows just look down compared to the guys over here on the left-hand side. Alegre looks bow down. Phoenix had looked bow down. And so that's 2 things. That's either right shift or that's more pressure. And both of those are good for people over there. And both of those are bad news for Azura out here on the... I mean, Azura is the furthest left on the racetrack at the moment. We're just getting through signal from the race committee boat that they will change the top mark to 2:30. I think that's perhaps the first mark change we've heard of all week long, in fact. So it has been the right shift that we had said, and it's held, and they're dealing with it for the next upwind. But that's kind of why we're seeing the setup the way it is.
It has been that kind of week where I saw Maria at breakfast, the race officer at breakfast, and she said, you know, it's been so easy. We've not had to move any marks. Just set the course at the start of the day, and it pretty much stays there. So, you know, no names, no pack drill, but that's the kind of venue it's been. In the kind of the average wind direction, there's these little 5-degree shifts, oscillations. But it's not been like you know, a 20-degree shift that you have to move the windward mark every race, or one race to the next.
Well, we've also had all the racing. I mean, I can't remember another time in any of the racing where we've gotten all 10 off, no problem, no worries.
I'm pretty sure Cascais last year we had a full diet. I may be wrong. We certainly had wind every day.
So as they come back together here, the first interaction I'm seeing is Brunelesek and Phoenix. And Phoenix was well behind earlier, and now Phoenix is crossing Brunelesek. So I think Phoenix had rounded almost last, used the right side looking upwind, the left side downwind to their advantage, and have made big gains for there. And again, the other boat that's out on that right-hand side is Preveza. So we'll have to see as they come back through if they've made gains on Brunelesek as well.
Coming into the leeward gate, first time down. Absolutely thrilling finale to the Royal Cup. Real tough conditions. So we're looking at Brunelesek possibly up to third, Jenny, with 3 places between them and Preveza. Preveza 6th, Platoon 7th, and Azura 8th, according to Virtual. As we watch Allegri coming into the right-hand mark, looking upwind, under no pressure at all, 250 meters ahead of Quantum Racing.
Exactly, Allegri with a nice early drop there, and again the right-hand side, because it worked so well for them on that first upwind. It makes total sense for them to go that way now. I don't quite see Brunelesek in third to my eye. I think Quantum's still ahead of them, and then I think Phoenix perhaps, but still, if the numbers lie the way you were just saying them, that would put them maybe back at the top of the leaderboard again.
Certainly, it's going to be interesting. There's a better view of it there from the drone, with Brunelesek seem to be quite far out relative to the leeward gate. Certainly, the speed that Quantum are coming in. Nice ley line to the right-hand mark, coming in with pace. We always say it's nice to finish your regatta with your one of your best scores, and that's very much the case for Allegri. This would be a confidence booster, looking forward to the next regatta for Quantum. Really didn't have that start, Jenny, did they? But they're much more like the usual Quantum.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't had the start to this race or the start to the week that they wanted necessarily. Quantum sitting 7th overall, 48 points to Allegri's 47 points. So if Allegri keeps this lead, which they should, Quantum won't be able to move up the leaderboard at all. But yeah, as you're saying, I'm sure they've got plenty to debrief, and they will be able to take that away. But behind them here, Brunelesek and Sled coming in, driving on top of Brunelesek. But Brunelesek is going to have a nice, decent inside lane to that right-hand side, and they might, in fact, be third around these bottom marks. I think I was wrong to call Phoenix in front of them. Just because Phoenix had crossed in front of them earlier, it doesn't mean they're maintaining that third spot. I can see them here, bottom corner, left-hand side, and they're well away from the mark. So Brunelesek dropping their spinnaker, jiving for that right side, putting themselves into third position, giving them as much opportunity as they can to try to get back up this leaderboard. Preveza just driving behind them, and then Sled coming out to this left-hand side. So Sled will be rounding in 4th, tied with, actually they're letting Phoenix in inside them. Preveza on the far side then in 4th. Phoenix rounding here in 5th. Far side is, there's actually someone now behind Preveza. It's Platoon into 6th, and Sled with that really wide rounding now dropping to 7th. And then the bummer for the leaders going into this race is that Azura has dropped to 8th place, Andy.
Goodness. You couldn't make it up, could you? Incredible.
Not at all.
They were looking so good early on off the start line, as we've seen before, but seem to have just separated away from the fleet too much. It's just trying to manage the fleet when you're...
a little too much.
Yeah, it's very hard to manage that.
A little too much confidence in that left-hand side, I think.
Yeah. But equally, you know, it's hard to manage this kind of showdown when you're in the back 4 boats in the fleet, and you've got other boats coming into the matches, if you like. I don't know whether they just thought, right, let's sail clear and try and sail fast, and you know, that's what's worked for them in the past. But unfortunately, this time they ended up on the wrong side of what was going on. So this is.
You know, I wonder as well if it wasn't just a one bad mode on the upwind. The point when they were lined up with Preveza underneath them and Brunelesek kind of in their lee bow, and then Brunelesek started really going bow down and out to that right-hand side. And at that moment, Azura had the opportunity to match and to go, all right, let's believe in the right and go bow down a little and go with Brunelesek and keep Preveza here in our stern quarter, or let's stay in a high mode here and kind of, at some point, they stayed in a high mode and they even tacked for the left one more time. And that might be the crucial moment in the race that pushed Azura down the back of the pack, gave Brunelesek the right a bit harder, and changed the fortunes in the way that we're seeing now.
Indeed, and a little gain,
The
I
one thing that's encouraging to me is they're actually to the right now, and this whole pack of 4 boats is to their left. So I think we could see Azura make some gains here and pull back, reel back in a little bit more, but they're going to have to make a lot of gains to catch up to Brunelesek at the moment.
So the advantage just now in that battle is with Preveza, but Brunelesek, I think, in a strong position with regard to the title. Or Preveza, I think, would win it at the moment, wouldn't they? Let's have a look at the projected points. Preveza just 1 point up on Brunelesek. So really it's between these two. Azura 2 points back now, Platoon pretty much out of the battle. Quick look there at Simon Dobney in the middle of the boat. Just pulling on the bang, I think. So really all on to say Preveza 1 point up on Brunelesek just now. Brunelesek need to break through Preveza and ideally get a boat between them. Breeze is built a little bit, Jenny.
You know, it built a lot before the start, and they were all hiking hard on that first upwind. I think as we come up the race course and away from land, it builds a little bit every time, and as we get towards land in the bottom of the race course, the breeze starts to lift up and over the land, and it
like we're seeing the sails get a bit more trimmed for more breeze, but it's not too much the afternoon sea breeze yet. It is still probably only about 12 knots. Meanwhile, I do think Azura has made big gains here. I think Azura's gained over Platoon and Sled. I'm not sure if you guys are actually seeing that yet with virtual eye, but it looks to me like
a little bit. They're certainly
Azura should, yeah.
Converging with Preveza. Preveza just, a high lane just now, but they're certainly much closer.
So they've tacked then underneath Preveza's line. Azura staying in touch with Preveza, letting Platoon and Sled go out to the left-hand side. I think a smart move. I think they know that they need to stay one boat length one boat place or less to Preveza, and they would still beat Preveza overall. And kind of there's only so much you can do with Brunelesek out in the front there, but it's seriously, it should be all on here with Brunelesek if Azura gets back into the
mix a little bit more instead of in a place.
Look at the concentration on Chimi Fantella's face there. Morgan Larson just behind him is the tactician. Provezza just have Azura outside them. Good pressure out there on that right side where Provezza are just now, as we're going probably halfway up, approaching halfway up the second beat. Final race of the Royal Cup. Azura just getting back into this race very slightly. But they were 8th at the leeward mark. Fighting a rearguard battle and certainly working out to that right side where we saw the initial gain on the first upwind. So can the Gaucho spirit prevail on the Azura?
You know, I just don't know if they are in the groove today, Andy.
Yeah.
Even now, looking at the three of them, so the lineup for me is sort of Phoenix, Provezza, and Azura. Azura looks bow down in comparison, and I don't think that they're necessarily bow down on purpose. It's not like they're going out for something on the right. It's just a little bit like they haven't really been able to sail the upwind that they want to, or have the upwind trim that they want. Maybe it's been a touch too long for them since they've been in this lighter breeze, or they're a little concerned on land, on the boat a touch. Possibly they feel uncomfortable having gone into the day so close to the scores. I'm not sure. It just doesn't look like they're quite firing on all cylinders.
So what increasingly what Brunello is they want Phoenix to be able to get through.
Lefty on the jump.
Just getting a little bit of onboard.
I'm just looking.
Sorry, go on, Jenny.
I'm just looking down all the tie breaks here because I feel like the way that it seems like it could work out here is there could be the potential for some major tie breaks at the top of the leaderboard. I mean, if Brunello ends up in, say, third and Phoenix does get through and Provezza does drop, then Brunello and Provezza could potentially be tied on 39 points. And if you look up that tie break, it's got Provezza has multiple seconds and Brunello has a first and then third. So
Yeah.
if they tie, Provezza wins that one. If Provezza and Azura tie, then Azura wins it. So Azura seems to win all the tie breaks with their two firsts. Provezza then seems to win the majority of the tie breaks, except if Platoon happened to get back in the mix. And if Platoon happened to get back in the mix, they also have two firsts. So it is complicated, confusing, and right now it looks like stacking up to be very close to be breaking some ties right at the end.
Yeah, still the advantage just with Provezza by that single point. Huge experience on board the Provezza all the way through the fleet, all the way through the team, although we did say that a couple of guys on board filling in, but you know, we were kind of chuckling about Guy Barron filling in, but you know, he's a sailor who's done everything in the sport, really. Multiple Volvos, America's Cup, Admiral's Cup, and successful coach as well in his time. And he, you know, he's in the Provezza team as much as a steadying influence for his technical skills with the boat. So, the advantage is still with Provezza. Watching Berenasek coming across from the left. Whether they can gain on their rival. Locked on the same points. Top test tie breaks. Azura Preveza. Azura would win it.
Azura does win that tie. Exactly. All Azura needed to do really was just make sure Cadiz.
And to be this close to winning, well, it's not over yet, is it, Andy? There's still a long. Can't say anything about it
At the moment.
Yeah, there we see that Berenasek have Preveza just to lure. Not very much in it. Allegri with that big lead. Quantum Racing in second. Azura then in fifth. Over 100 meters behind Preveza. This is starting to look quite settled for these places, certainly third, fourth, fifth. And Platoon very much out of it. I wonder if Azura can do anything from where they are. Not looking.
I think it's hard here with such a long. So as they come down the run here, Andy, with Preveza in 4th place, with Azura in 5th place, that is enough, correct, for the Italians to take the win?
On count back. 38 to Azura, 38 to Preveza, 39 to Brunensek.
But if they even feel at all like they're going to run out of speed or run out of energy, they need to heat it back up. But it is nail-bitingly light and nail-bitingly close as well.
Just look at our colour commentator calling the breeze, actually sitting at the shroud. All right, Aaron, doing a sterling job on board. I don't remember a finish like this. In this kind of breeze. One of our stats experts should be able to come and tell us when the last time we had a regatta decided on count back. I can tell you that last year there was none of the regattas last year, as you asked, Jenny, had a full complement of races. Even Cascais, we lost a race.
I know.
In front of our
Siboney, Zadar and Valencia, we all had 8 races and 9 races in Cascais and Portals. Just the kind of fact you need right now. But all credit to this venue, really has produced some fantastic racing. We haven't had the 20-something knots that we'd been promised by the brochures, but we have had the closest possible racing now. Absolutely heart-stopping finale. Head-to-head just now between Azura and Preveza coming down this run. Naturally, if Azura could get through Preveza, then it would be clear. And we're just losing data from Preveza momentarily, as if to just push us over the edge. I don't know about your Turkish elections.
I can confirm by eye they're not being blanketed yet by Azura. They are still just holding off in front.
Speed's very, very even. Preveza just very slightly quicker. It's all about the angles they're sailing just now.
You know, the one interesting bit here is they have split from Brunensek. So in the split, if
them, that would be
Sorry, say that again, Jenny. We just lost you.
I'm saying that the one thing is Preveza and Azura, well, they're stuck like glue over there. They've split from Brunensek, and if Brunensek makes any loss over here on the right-hand side on the downwind, Preveza could possibly come back across. Yeah, beating Brunensek, putting them in between the two, and then still win it.
Brunensek pushing right out to that right side, I think, looking downwind. Really have to play their joker on this one. And they are the team that have made the best gains downwind, Jenny, haven't they, over the course of the regatta? And I think they're pretty quick downwind anyway, so may not be over. But for Azura just need to stick, as you said, like glue to Preveza.
Preveza just rolling into a jibe here, so it will be interesting to see whether Azura decides to come back with them, stick with them, and I think at the moment they're not in
jibe, so letting Preveza get away from them, which is a bit scary if you're an Italian supporter, a bit exciting if you're a Preveza supporter at the moment. I think
my heart rate is now directly linked to the regatta leaderboard, which is changing every second. And we're now seeing Preveza 38, Azura 39, Brunellasek 39. It's all about Brunellassek's positioning, isn't it? If they can make that gain coming down that right side, which they seem to be doing. They seem to have good pace, good
Well, they needed
pressure.
to make a loss, really. We needed them to fall out of third, let Preveza into third, and let Brunellasek then be in fourth place in between Preveza and Azura, and that would have given the win to Preveza. But I think at the moment, what you're saying is correct. It does look like Brunellasek making gains. In fact, perhaps Platoon behind them making some gains as well. So Platoon might be the boat to come into the mix and get in between Preveza and Azura.
Yeah, certainly that right side seems to have seeing some gains with Platoon and Brunellasek both gaining as they come converging with Preveza and Sled. I think we're going to see Platoon possibly crossing in front of Preveza. Very close though, just seeing it in the images just now, but it's certainly closer. Brunellasek cross.
Yeah, Preveza there driving on top on the line of Platoon, so definitely thinking Platoon is a threat. And meanwhile, Azura did not go with Preveza at all, stayed out on that right side looking upwind, left side looking downwind, and that's the question mark, is when they come back in, where will they be in this lineup? Is Platoon going to be in between the two of them? Will Azura have made gains or not? And I think from what we've just seen with Preveza and Platoon, it looks like that right side was a gain. So I think we should expect a loss from Azura here. Yeah.
Phew. Hard to call, really, isn't it? As we look at Azura, way out on that left side, they looked at decent pressure. Let's see if the virtual shows us that Azura have dropped a little bit relative to Platoon for sure. Jenny, where are you just now?
We're just at the moment getting into position at the finish line, waiting for Allegre again.
See Azura there in the background relative to
Fine for who wins
Provenza.
overall.
Yeah. At the moment, the advantage is still with Azura, as we said on count back. All depends really. On other boats really. We're looking at Allegra then coming through the finish line.
Allegra about to take this win. I mean, they're 3 boat lengths from taking what will be their second win of this regatta. And as we said, this will still just keep them in 6th place overall. But a good ending and a good finish to what was otherwise a bit of a tricky regatta for this team. I think Andy Soriano will be happy to walk away with this win and with such a commanding lead. But behind them still such a big question mark whether Azura is actually going to be able to pull it off, or whether Provenza from the left is going to let a boat get in between them.
Or a platoon come through Azura. But anyway, we're looking at Quantum coming through for second. So their second to best result over the course of the regatta. They had that race win in race 3, but otherwise 3 7ths and 2 6ths. But I think a good result for them, getting them kind of on track. Plenty of learning here. It's going to be Berenicek, I think, getting third. Not much that they can do in terms of enhancing their challenge at this point. Platoon through Azura.
Did you just say platoon through Azura? That could be said with more conviction, Andy. Because if that's the case, and it looks like to the eye, if that's the case, then that's...
I can convict Allegra being first and Quantum being second, but at the moment it's so in the lap of the gods. The variations are just, you need a computer, which indeed we do have. But Berenicek will come through, and we're just going to be reliant on John Rendell's mathematical genius brain working on the virtual eye, computing the scores all the time.
Okay, at the moment, it does look like as Berenicek crosses into third, you can just see behind them Provenza and Platoon, and yet on the far side you can see Azura, and it is really all up in the air as a question mark who's going to actually get through. Platoon will be, I believe, able to lay the boat end of the line. Oh, maybe not. Platoon might have one extra jibe in them, in which case it really is too hard to call from here. Azura coming in, man, Johnny Rendell, how is that virtual eye going? Because to the eye, it is very, very difficult. I think Platoon's across Azura at the moment. We're seeing the cross right now. Platoon across Azura doesn't mean they'll be across them at the line. They do still have one more jibe to the finish. They're going for the jibe here. I don't think Platoon necessarily knows how important they are to the overalls. Provenza probably knows how important Platoon is to the overalls. No. They just want to keep them ahead of them anyway. And meanwhile, Azura coming on with some steam. They've got the speed of having not have just jibed. They're heating up hard to try to get on Platoon's bad air. It's all about whether Azura can get over the top of Platoon, and instead they don't think they can, and they're going for the jibe early, and I think that is admitting defeat, unfortunately. I think Platoon is going to be able to sneak in. You know, as I say that, though, they're going for the jibe themselves, but I think Platoon's got this. They're sneaking in just dead downwind to the finish line. They should be able to get across, and that, if we see Provenza celebrating here. Platoon taking it. Azura is going to be sixth, 6, 7, 8, yeah, 6. So I don't think Provenza knows what that means. You can see them on board, not necessarily giving handshakes or hugs yet, so I'm not sure Provenza knows they've got this regatta win. Maybe I don't know it, right? Is that what the math says, Andy?
It doesn't say that yet. We're just waiting for Sled and Phoenix to finish. But then John Rundle's going to press the button. There's going to be one very happy team and one not quite so happy team, but I think you're probably right. Let's have a look at the regatta standings in the next few seconds as Phoenix come through. Bow number 11. confirmation hopefully coming in the next few seconds who has won. The Royal Cup, we think it's Preveza. No signs, no visible signs as yet on the water. It's pretty much certainly going to be on countback, but there we go. There's the race finish. First Allegra, second Quantum Racing, third Banana Sec, fourth Preveza, fifth Platoon, sixth Azura, seventh Sled, eighth Phoenix. So fantastic finale. We couldn't ask for more. And there you go. Preveza 38 points, Azura 39, Banana Sec 39, Platoon 41, Sled 47, Allegra 48, Quantum Racing 50, and Phoenix 11. So Preveza second place in Menorca. We have them as the winners of the Royal Cup by a single point. That's provisional after 10 races. But a fantastic win for Preveza, as I said. So close, 4 seconds in it in Menorca. 1 point in it with Azura. Yeah, celebrations break out on board. Well-deserved win. No sign, I don't think, or I can't see our owner on board. Disappointing for him, but there we go. Simon Fry leading the celebrations, as you might well expect this evening. So Jenny, what a performance from Preveza then. Kept their cool, did all they possibly could. Second in race 9.
They had such an amazing regatta, Andy. I'm actually just trying to hop on board the coach boat of Preveza itself to see if we can get aboard the boat for an interview. But such a fabulous, fabulous job to this team. Well done, you guys. To the team, well done. We were watching the finish and wondering if you guys even knew how important platoon getting in between was.
No.
Well, it seems like on the coach boat they knew for sure. I don't know if on board the boat themselves they knew, but we are just trying to get out there to check in with John Cutler and Hamish Pepper. And as we were talking about, Andy, a new team sailing here this year, and so well done to have almost won the last regatta and then to be pulling it off and winning here.
That's indeed the case. You know, they made big changes over the course of the closed season, if you like, with John Cutler coming in from the coach boat, Olympic bronze medalist, with Hamish Pepper, new tactician with a huge amount of experience in the fleet. There's Chris Hosking taking the beers on board. Not the happiest of years for him last year as the project manager.
More important than me on board, perhaps, but congratulations, you guys.
It's great. It was a heap of fun. It was such close racing today. And you can see that how many boats are close. We're trying to work out whether we've done enough, or point in the race we're probably 4th overall, and then just chip away. So it's really exciting.
I think exactly that. There was one point where you were 4th overall, and I wish we were watching to see if you the points, or were you waiting to hear from? No.
We sort of thought we knew the points, but it's best trying hard to stay in front of platoon because there are sister ships, so we always want to try and be in front. So yeah, it was good. It was great work.
Well, we spoke about it the other day, Andy. John hasn't heard it himself, but we said he can't seem to wipe the smile off of his face, and I think super well deserved. To the team as well, you guys,
Nacho
congratulations.
Do you
have a question for him yourself, Andy?
Yeah, have a word as a navigator. He must have been on top of the points all the way through.
Okay, they want me to ask Nacho if you knew the scores as platoon was coming across the line. Did you know that you guys had done enough?
No. No idea.
And he's sure that you had those scores, but
No idea. No.
that's a triple head shake, the no, Andy. I mean,
I was too busy. I could not think of anything else than ley lines and shifts and meters, and no time for anything else.
all right, fair enough. So that was a hard no. What about, where do we have, where's Hamish Pepper at the moment? We're missing
aboard with
technician
Guy
aboard.
Barron.
Oh, I'm just blind. Too late. Well, I've gotten to Hamish already. What were your thoughts coming across the finish line? Did you guys have any idea how close it was and how the overall scores were going?
Yeah, we knew it was close. We knew we had to put a boat in between us and Azura, and we're a bit lucky there down that run. You know, Azura nearly rolled us, and we had to drive back, and we're just ahead of Platoon, lucky enough. And so a little bit of lady luck again, but we'll take it.
Lady luck, they'll take it. Well, all right. We started the week with our color commentator guy. We can finish the week with him. Andy wants to say a hello to you from the studio. Well done for hopping aboard and helping your team win today.
Yeah, well, I messaged him this morning and said we'll have to see how well the has-been does today. Yeah, so I have to say we were a bit nervous, but Peter Evans, also the coach, was on board today, and the both of us, the guys, were giving a lot of jip this morning. And I think, as I said on the commentary, the pit man gets a bit of abuse on this boat, and the guys definitely didn't forget about that today.
All right. Well, would you guys still say your has-been? Would you say your
soon-to-be's? So what a fantastic win there for the Preveza team. They were so close in Menorca. There was only 4 seconds in it with that little battle with the Bernasek in the last race, and that was what stood between them and the overall win. Let's have a look at that race and see what we can remember. It really was a heart-stopper all the way through. Fairly standard start. We saw, in fact, Azura and Bernasek coming off the start line together. We didn't think Azura had got enough pace, but they dragged away very nicely. Great start from Guillermo Parada with his speed build, and once again Preveza and Platoon on the right hand side of the line. Preveza 3 up from the right, and then really immediately off the start line on that first beat it was all on between the 3 main protagonists. Platoon up the left early on. Then at the top mark it was Allegri had made that gain because they tacked out very early and were way out on the right, got that right shift along with Quantum. So Allegri leading round the top mark with Quantum, and that they really split away, and that was their race signed and sealed. Sled were up there in third. Down the first run, it was a fairly standard bear-away set, and then we saw Phoenix jibe away and Azura go with them. Platoon staying this side. At that point, Preveza were pretty good going down that run. Leeward Gate, still big lead for Allegri and Quantum. The battle going on for the regatta title was going on in the lower half of the fleet at that point. Preveza, they're challenging or alongside Sled coming through the Leeward Gate. So Azura then going up the right, Preveza and Platoon locked together going left. But really it was all about the positions of Preveza, Platoon and Azura in the end, with Platoon coming through on that last run. That really was what gave the title to Preveza. But we're looking at just now at Allegri coming round that top mark with that big lead. Nice confidence booster going into the next regatta in Cascais. So too for Quantum. Then you see Bernasek leading with Preveza, Azura behind. And at that point it was locked, it was on tie break from memory as far as we can remember. And then, as I say, there we go. Azura down the final run, and at the finish, well, it was that big win for Allegri. Handshakes for Andy Soriano's team. Nice way to finish the regatta. Quantum come through in second. Let's say Platoon getting through Azzurra really is what signed and sealed it for Preveza, for the Turkish team. Sadly, we haven't seen the owner on board today. I'm sure he'll have to take some time to celebrate in the near future with his team. That's their first win since Puerto Portals a couple of years ago. And one of the things that Guy said when we had him in the studio on day one was just how hard the team are working, as indeed all the teams are, but you know, they've been absolutely on the go since February, March. Changes to the boat through the winter. Looking for a little bit more performance in the breeze, but certainly both the Vrolic designs here, that's Preveza and Platoon, have shown ample pace in the light to moderate sea breeze conditions. So let's look at the overall standings after 10 races. As I say, this is the first venue we've had since last year and this year that we've had all 10 races, and Preveza then winning by 1 point ahead of Azzurra. Azzurra so close, but taking second place. Brunasek tied on points, losing out by virtue of Azzurra's 2 firsts to take third, but a good podium. We spoke with them before the regatta. They said their target was a podium with the new boat. Platoon get 4th, Sled 5th, Allegra 6th, Quantum Racing 7th, and Phoenix 11th. So fantastic regatta. Hopefully we can also have a look at the circuit standings. Well, Preveza not only winning the regatta, but taking over the overall lead by 2 points. They were second by 1 point, obviously coming here. So they take over the series standings by 2 points. Platoon second, Azzurra third, 10 points behind Preveza. Quantum Racing now in 4th at 17 points behind the circuit leaders, and Brunasek 5th, Allegra 6th, Sled 7th, Phoenix 11, 8th, 9th is Phoenix 12, and Gladiator and Phoenix 12, who didn't compete here. Unfortunately, we will be seeing them again, I think. So what a fantastic regatta. Great to come somewhere new, and conditions have been so challenging all the way through the week. Jenny, your final conclusions really on this venue in particular. It's given us great racing. Nothing was ever decided until that final race, and how close it was.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about our heartbeats racing, and I think the reality is that sailors have all loved sailing here. They said it was a tricky venue. Nobody could necessarily get it right. One day to the next was different. One race to the next was different. And I think they love that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm enjoying just getting to be on board a boat right now, but I can't tell you how nice it has actually been to be out here on the water, where we've gotten all the racing off on time, where we've had breeze every day. We have this glorious sunshine, and I think that you couldn't ask for closer racing and more interesting racing than what we just had. You couldn't ask for something more intense than just the final jibe at the finish line at the bottom mark to get Platoon in and Azzurra out, and to the like and lady luck, as Hamish called it, of this boat, and unfortunately to the detriment of the Italians. But now it's nice to see that they're tied for second and third between Azzurra and Brunasek, the new team and the young gun here. So it's just been incredible racing and such a cool second regatta of what's going to be a fabulous season.
Absolutely, it's going to be a fabulous season. If it's going to be so close, then really we're going to have to just learn to stay a little bit cooler and calmer. It's incredibly close racing here. We expect it to be more of the same in terms of how close it is. Perhaps a little bit more breeze in Cascais next month. Cascais has got such a fantastic reputation. We had probably the best regatta ever last year for the World Championships. We had wind every day, and maybe if we can have more of the same, then there. You know, we had 20 knots. I think the average wind speed in Cascais was 16, 18 knots. If we had that, it really opens up the game. But join us again then next month in Cascais for the 52 Super Series for the third regatta. Thank you for joining us for what has been a fantastic event, and we'll see you again next month in Cascais.